All right, looks like we're live. Looks like we are live. Let me get a sound check really quick. Should have had it pulled up already. Here we go. We're live. Looks like we. All right, we are definitely live. And before I run this intro beat, I just want to say fair use, YouTube, fair use. Don't flag me. Don't give me no copyright. This is for entertainment purposes only. Okay? Fair use. Let's get it. Up. Hold on. Gotta fix my settings. I didn't fix my damn settings. So now I gotta go back and do that. All right, here we go. Okay. Got the volume up. Take the sound out of my speakers and put in my headphones. Okay. All right. I think we should be straight now. Make sure y'all hit the like button on the way in, by the way. If you haven't hit the like button, please make sure you do. All right. And again, YouTube, fair use, fair use, fair use. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. From the time I heard it skip, I knew it was going to start messing up. Hold on. Only takes a minute to fix it. There's a couple of clicks. All right. There we go. I got to figure out why that happens. What is up? What is up? What is up, everybody? Thank you guys for being here. Make sure you hit that like button if you're watching on YouTube. We got 18 in the house so far, but we only got 13 likes, so we're already falling behind, and the show ain't even start yet. Come on. And shout out to everybody watching on Rumble. Captain Wronghole, good to see you, bro. That's a funny ass name. Every time I say that name, I got to say pause because I'm not sure which hole you're referring to there, fella. But shout out to you, my brother. You've been around for a minute, man. You know I rocks with you, man. And everybody else that's watching on Rumble, don't forget, say hi in the chat. Hit that thumbs up. Let's blow those numbers up. Appreciate everybody being here. I hope you guys caught that upload that I put up earlier today about the spiritual warfare. Like that's really true. I really honestly believe that because I've seen it, and grown up in the church and being exposed to, like, what people would call demonic possession and all that type of stuff, where individuals would, like, they would come for prayer, but then they would, like, snap in and out of, like, this nasty personality type thing that, we would call that, like, multiple personality disorder these days, or mental illness, but back in those days in the 90s and shit, that was demons. That was the devil. And I believe it. I don't know about y'all, but I believe it, because the way these people are in the streets acting right now over some shit that don't even concern them, it can't be nothing but a spell, but a demonic spell. You know what I'm saying? And this is all part of the agenda. And I made that upload today because I wanted to kind of set the stage for that discussion, right? Where this establishment, whose agenda it is to maintain power and maintain the status quo, their agenda is to bring in these foreign nationals, flood the country with them, because they know within the span of 10 to 20 years, and hell, it's been 10 years since Trump's been on the scene. So you see how fast a decade goes by, right? Um, in the next 10 years, 20 years, these people will have overpopulated the country with first generation, born citizens under the 14th Amendment, their anchor babies. And these now newborn citizens that are born to these foreign nationals would then have access to our governmental power, because we do have an all-inclusive open door system. And if you're an American, you can do things, right? You can get involved in government, you can run for office, you can be the president, that type of shit. Imagine what that would be like for us as Americans, seeing all this influx of mainly Latin Americans coming into the country and just taking over neighborhood by neighborhood, city by city, block by block. And America has always had a pretty stable Latino population, but those Latinos are like us. They're just of Latino descent, but they're American. They believe in American values. They understand the Constitution, and they have somewhat of an understanding of, the political system. But these new people that they're bringing in, they are not American. They're coming here with ideologies and cultures that don't necessarily fit into American society in a healthy way, because a lot of these traditions that they bring were the same behaviors in their countries that helped destroy their country. Like, for example, the gross political ignorance, the pedophilia, the sexual deviance, the criminality. We have enough of that here amongst American citizens. So to open up the borders and invite more of that from foreign countries would be absolutely insane, unless the people running the country that made that decision had an agenda behind it, which would involve replacing certain factions of the American population. And the first group that's being replaced is Black Americans. But in order to get American citizens to advocate for this, they got to put you under a spell. They got to lie to you. They got to gas you up and emotionally manipulate you and make it emotional and make it about skin color, because they can't make it about facts, because the fact of the matter is they are foreign nationals and they do not have legal status in our country. Every other country on earth has similar rules. You go there and you don't have legal status, they will expel you. In most countries, they'll actually lock you up for a year or two before they deport you. So here in America, we're actually pretty lenient about it. We'll let your ass go. You could be free, just not here. And the thing about this influx of foreign nationals is that move provided cover for very dangerous people to enter the country and expand these cartel networks with the help of the Zionist Israeli Mossad. And they work hand in hand in conjunction, and they act as foot soldiers for these entities that have political control. And they use the puppet politicians to turn a blind eye to their existence and their criminality in order to allow them to build their wealth up, build up their armaments, recruit more manpower, and lie in wait. And this is what we saw happen in Iran. This is why I keep referencing Iran with these ICE protests. Now, somebody asked me a really good question, and I should have elaborated on this a little better. And they were saying, well, Citizen Man, we seen them, encourage people to go out in the streets in 2020, you know what I'm saying? But the agenda wasn't to have shooters pop up and mow them down, right? And that's very true. That's very true, because the agenda was different back then, because they were not all out of options. You see, now they're out of options. They got nothing left. You see, back in 2020, what they wanted to do was steal the election. So that was the agenda. That was the play behind creating all the chaos and shit, was so people would be distracted from the fact that Joe Biden isn't campaigning, and they could continue running the Trump bad smear campaign. And so come election day, people will be down for Joe Biden, because they know Trump is bad, but they don't know nothing about Biden. So they'll trust the guy they don't know over the guy that they know, who they think is bad, right? But now, since the Trump administration, through Operation Cybercom, has been systematically de-rigging the elections to the point where an entire world leader got captured over interfering with the 2020 elections and a bunch of other things, of course, they're out of options. They can't steal elections like that anymore. And they cannot manipulate the public as much as they used to anymore in order to get the people to vote for their puppets. And we got the midterm elections coming up. So now they got to run the ultimate smear campaign, and they got to play their trump card, which is sacrifice the lives of their supporters in order to blame Trump. And with Renee Good and Alex Preddy, those are two prime examples of it. And we're lucky that's as far as it went, because it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a lot worse. But now that they're out of options, the only option, because remember, their whole plan is to get Trump out of office. They have to get Trump out because they need a puppet in there who is going to push the agenda. Trump is disrupting the agenda. So they got to get Trump out. And the only way now, they tried stealing the election. They tried putting him in jail. They tried draining his pockets with the fake lawsuits. They tried the 10-year-long smear campaign. They tried tying him to Epstein. They tried everything. And they are out of options. And now the only option is create chaos, spill blood, blame Trump, turn the whole country against Trump. And that bloodshed will come by way of these mass protests, these protesters and these mass protests being executed by sleeper cells posing as government agents. So the surge in ICE operations that we're seeing in these liberal cities across the country, not only does it have to do with the removal of the illegal aliens, but it also has to do with the removal and the I guess disruption of these sleeper cells. That's why these ICE agents are dressed in militarized gear like that, because they're dealing with organized crime and heavily armed sleeper cells that are manned by illegal aliens that flooded into the country under the cover of the migrant caravans. That's why these guys are so heavily armed. And you notice every time you see these disruptors, these agitators impeding ICE, most times it tends to be a squad of guys in head to toe in SWAT gear most times, because those are the units that are going after the most dangerous criminals, the worst of the worst. And the regular guys with the regular clothes and the vests, they're the ones going through the neighborhoods, going to the schools, going to the job sites, and so on, and grabbing other illegal aliens that they're aware of. And I believe in a lot of cases, the plainclothes guys, the people that they're grabbing, a lot of them have communications or relations with individuals involved with those sleeper cells. So they're getting intel from these people, forwarding it to the units that are dressed in SWAT gear, and then those units go out on the targeted raids. And all the pushback that's coming from these Democrats, it's because they're scared, because for far too long they've been turning a blind eye to these criminals. They've been allowing them to operate with impunity, and they've also been profiting from the crime. So as these sleeper cells get busted, they're going to start talking too. And they're going to start dropping names of these politicians. So these politicians, it would be in their interest to protect themselves by creating as much chaos as they can in the streets, getting as much people out there to divert ICE away from the operations, disrupt the intel gathering operations, disrupt the raids on the sleeper cells, so they'll have time to move and move spots and reestablish themselves in a safer area. And all we're hearing about in the media is the illegal aliens, but we're not hearing much about these sleeper cells. Now, there have been reports back in June, but these cells still exist and they're still operating. In fact, in LA, there's actually a bigger threat now, because some of the local politicians there have actually been calling for the street gangs, who are known to be heavily armed and extremely violent, calling for the street gangs to go to war with ICE. Now, are they dumb enough to do it? I don't think so. But the fact that these politicians see them as a viable force should tell you which side of the aisle they stand on. Because if you were the type of politician that was in favor of busting these gangs and locking these criminals up and not letting them operate with impunity, it would be very difficult to issue a public call to arms to these same gang members that you've been locking up. But if you've been doing business with these gang members and you've been profiting from this gang activity, and you've been using your position in government to provide them with cover, then you could be pretty confident that they will answer your call to arms, because essentially they're your foot soldiers. So when you see these politicians calling on the gangs to come out and fight ICE, you really got to look at these politicians with the side eye, because how you so cool with the gangs and you work for the government that's supposed to be putting these guys out of business? So essentially, they're exposing themselves. And any gang members that answer that call and go out there and get themselves in trouble, if they happen to get arrested, whatever operations that gang has that's tied to that politician, the government is now going to find out about it, because these dudes are going to snitch. The streets ain't like it used to be. There used to be a code in the streets where snitching was a no-no. Now, everybody's telling. So what do you think is going to happen when these guys get arrested? They're going to get to telling. But tonight's topic, their time is up. 2020 election fraud on the table as mass deportations continue. Now, somebody asked me and said, well, Citizen Man, if the entire Biden presidency was just one big show and it was the military running it, and Trump was actually elected commander in chief and he was still in control of the military, as you say, then why did he have the military allow Joe Biden to do all the damage that he did, the Biden administration? And that's a pretty good question. And it requires a lengthy answer, but I'll try to keep it as short as I can, but it's going to be lengthy. The reason is because the bad actors within the government who are not well-known faces and names, they had to be exposed. So they had to be allowed to operate to an extent in order to show themselves. They had to be made comfortable. They had to be made to believe that their man was in charge. So everything was on the up and up. And their people were running the agency. So they didn't have to worry about federal law enforcement or prosecution. So that way they can operate out in the open with impunity. After all, they just got away with the biggest freaking election fraud in US history, I would want to say. At least the most obvious. So they were definitely confident and they were definitely comfortable. So they exposed themselves. Now we're in the age of justice. And that exposure is coming back to haunt them. Now, the second reason is the American people needed to be shown what it was that they supported, the people who actually supported Joe Biden. So when the food prices went up and the gas prices went up and life got hard, the people who supported Joe Biden were supposed to look at it and say, you know what? Shit wasn't like this under Trump. I think I'm going to vote for Trump the next time around. So it was meant to be a wake-up call for the American people that were still half asleep, even though it was universal pain because we all felt it. But to me, I just took that as this is the age of information. This is the age of the hustler. So you just got to hustle harder. You got to work harder, put in more hours, get more contracts, expand, find other streams of revenue and so on. So you just got to hustle harder now. But it's not going to last forever. And look, Trump is back in office and a year later, shit's is slowly returning back to normal. You know what I'm saying? Now, the third reason was to wipe out the sleeper cells. Because with Trump knowing that the sleeper cells were here and they existed, it would have been pretty strange if he would have just deployed federal troops all across the country for no apparent reason and have them, kicking in doors and doing raids in neighborhoods and busting up these safe houses. And then the media would have said, oh, Trump is using the Gestapo to go after the brown people and he's doing it for no reason and it's unprovoked and blah, 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 when in fact he was going after the sleeper cells. And that would have been enough, to tell you the truth. That would have been enough to even turn some of his own supporters against him. So that would have been bad. So what we needed was a cover-up. And the cover-up would have been the mass influx of illegals and now the need to remove them. So you let the Biden administration and the dirty players and the bad actors in that administration do what they do. And they opened up the borders and they stopped enforcing immigration laws and they flooded the country with all these illegals, overwhelmed the welfare system, overran cities, forced black people out of their homes, all that crazy shit. Right? But now that all that's happened, more and more Americans are turning against this open border policy and they see the detriment of it. So now they're in support of mass deportations and Trump got more votes than he did in 2020. You see how that works? And now that we have this influx of illegals putting too much pressure on the welfare system and pretty much overwhelming the system, and Americans are aware of this influx, now that we see the mass deployment of federal troops across the country, we now have some understanding of why it's happening. So the media, it's very hard now for the media to sit there and spin it as if this is some Hitlerian Gestapo tactic where Trump is just targeting the brown people out of nowhere. Because now the issue is, should these illegal aliens be allowed to stay in the country or not? Well, after the shitstorm that they caused, hell no. So that now becomes a discussion. And of course, the mainstream media is still trying to spin it in the direction of, Trump is Hitlerian and these are the Gestapo and they're targeting brown people and all that shit. But you see, because we witnessed open borders for the last 4 years under Joe Biden, that narrative is not flying with too many people anymore. Because more and more people now are starting to look at this situation as a matter of nationalism rather than a matter of racism. So it ain't working. Because we just witnessed 10 million foreign nationals flood into our country with the child trafficking, the drug trafficking, the weapons trafficking, all of that shit. We watched it with our own two eyes, and now we have a president that was against it in the first place, did everything he could to try to prevent it, and now he's having to take extreme measures to solve it. And more and more Americans are now starting to understand that. And more Americans are starting to look at these people that are making it about skin color, and they're seeing the game for what it is. It ain't about skin color. It never was about skin color. It was about nationality and national sovereignty. And the Joe Biden administration sacrificed our sovereignty when they opened up the borders to these foreign nationals. And they further pissed on our sovereignty when they raised taxes on us and started giving that money to these illegal aliens who shouldn't have been here. That was a major slap in the face. And that's why it blows my mind to see American citizens out there who also were paying taxes to support these illegal aliens out there taking to the streets, risking life and limb and freedom to defend these illegal aliens being in the country. It's almost like they love getting robbed. But a lot of these people are paid agitators, and the rest are just too slow to figure it out. And they're serving the agenda while being, I guess, gassed up to believe that what they're doing is for some noble cause that helps the country. And it's done nothing but hurt the country. And in places where you don't have this overwhelming level of fraud and crime and domestic terrorists, you don't see this much pushback in the streets against ICE. People in Tennessee were talking about how ICE did raids down in Memphis, and it wasn't a big deal because nobody batted an eye. Down in Louisiana, same thing. Down in Florida, same thing. And the local police are working with the federal agents to keep the citizens who would want to be agitators at bay, so they don't get anywhere near the federal agents to even have scuffles with the federal agents and get their asses shot off by the federal agents, because they're dealing with local police. And the reason why they're dealing with the local police is because the local politicians there are not ordering the police to stand down and be derelict in their duty. Because if your job is to enforce the law and you got people in your city violating the law by impeding federal operations, those people need to be prosecuted. And it takes the pressure off the feds if the state could prosecute them and the local police can arrest them, because then the feds can focus on who they're actually there for. But you see, in the cities like Minneapolis, where they're ordering the police to stand down and leaving the feds at the mercy of the people, now the feds are being forced to defend themselves against American citizens. Now the feds are being constantly impeded by American citizens, and that is doing nothing but giving cover to the targeted individuals that the feds are going after. So they're making it more difficult purposefully. That's why they keep saying ICE got to go, get out, ICE out, whatever the fuck they say. That's why they're doing that, because they're protecting what the Democratic Party is doing, essentially, is protecting their assets. That's what they're doing. These sleeper cells and this foreign manpower, those are assets, tactical assets. And they're running these disruption and agitator operations in order to protect their assets. Because not only are these assets sources of funding, but they're also sources of intimidation. A lot of these sleeper cells, these are the guys that would go out and actually do the hits when people talk about, oh, they killed her or they killed him for speaking out and this and that. We never get into the conversation of who the actual hitters may be. But a lot of times these hitters are these illegal aliens, these gang members. These MS-13 was a well-known hit squad for Hillary Clinton, wouldn't you know? And of course, these Middle Eastern sleepers that are here under the direction of the Israeli Mossad, while posing to be radical Muslims or whatnot, these are the guys that were used as the hit squads, because if ever they were to be caught or they were to be some blowback from the homicide, they could just throw that person under the bus, let them take the charge, make it look like a botched crime, and boom, They're out of the way. The orchestrators of the hit get to walk free, no suspicion, and they just replace that hitter because these guys are expendable. In the streets, we got a term for it. We call them throwaway niggas. That's what we call them, throwaways. They're the guys you hire for a Doja mission, and you send him on a Doja mission knowing he's either going to get killed or go to jail. And when he goes to jail, you just throw him away and get another sucker to come fill his shoes. But they all want you to hate Trump because Trump is disrupting the agenda. And I love it. Now, I mentioned the Q clearance patriot in a previous show, and I might have mentioned it on the last show, but we're at a Q clearance patriot moment once again. And before we get into the slideshow, just make sure you guys go follow me over on Rumble. If you haven't followed me on Rumble yet, please make sure you do, because if they zap me on Citizen Man TV, Rumble is where you'll find me. And on Rumble, you'll find a lot of content that's not available on YouTube. I'm talking long form shows. All right. Very, very valuable information, real good entertainment. If you work late or you drive long hours and whatnot, you know what I'm saying? Rumble is where you'll find the full catalog, because a lot of the content that's been deleted off YouTube from past channels and from me having to set the videos to private so they don't get flagged, those videos are available on Rumble. We basically chronicle almost every major event that's happened. So if you want insights, that's where you go. Also, go support me on the Citizen Man backup channel. Go subscribe to the backup channel if you haven't already. Again, in case they zap me on Citizen Man TV, I can still exist on YouTube on the backup channel. And of course, last but not least, if any of you guys would like to support the show and send in a kind donation, you could do so via Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo by using the tags scrolling across the screen in the banner below, the links that are pinned to the top of the YouTube chat. Excuse me. In the black box where it says Citizen Man TV in yellow, just click the yellow. The box opens up. All the links are there. And you can also find those links in the description box of every video on YouTube and Rumble. And I want to give a big shout out really quick to my good brother Lee 14224. And brother Lee says support for Sunday's show. Appreciate that support, brother Lee. Thank you for that. Okay. Now let's get back to it. So we are at a Q clearance patriot moment, and I'll break that down to you. The Q clearance patriot, as you can see at the top, it was posted on November 1st, 2017, and it was actually written by Donald Trump himself. It's signed, "God bless my fellow Americans, 4/10/20." That's DJT. That's Donald John Trump. So this is Trump telling us this himself. And it reads, "My fellow Americans, over the course of the next several days, you will undoubtedly realize that we are taking back our great country, the land of the free, from the evil tyrants that wish to do us harm and destroy the last remaining refuge of shining light." And of course, who are we taking our country back from? From the foreign invaders and their domestic collaborators. On POTUS's order, we have initiated certain fail-safes that shall safeguard the public from the primary fallout, which is slated to occur 11.3 upon the arrest announcement of Mr. Podesta, actionable 11.4. Confirmation. Now, the John Podesta thing, that's already passed. So in this case, John Podesta would be representative of another big name to go down. Just keep that in mind. And Trump's been talking a lot about Russiagate with Obama. So just keep that in mind. Confirmation to the public of what is occurring will then be revealed and will not be openly accepted. Now, in this current situation, the confirmation to the public of what's occurring is the deployment of these SWAT guys with ice vests on, and the deployment of specific military units to specific cities. by cover of the National Guard. Okay? So whenever we see the military deployments or these SWAT guys roaming around with ICE, that's confirmation of what is occurring. They're going after high level, very dangerous targets. But it won't be openly accepted because the general public likes to be spoon fed their information. They want to be told directly. They don't have the ability to read between the lines because in most cases they can't trust what they see between the lines. And in other cases, to everybody else, it's a blur and they don't even see any lines. Public riots are being organized in serious numbers in an effort to prevent the arrest and capture of more senior public officials. Now, what do we see happening in Minneapolis? Public riots that are being organized in pretty serious numbers. And what is it for? It's in an effort to prevent the arrest and capture of certain individuals. The criminal aliens and the aliens committing fraud that's tied to these politicians, senior public officials. On POTUS's order, a state of temporary military control will be actioned and special ops carried out. Now, this is when I told you guys that special operations units from the military, Department of War, they have the ability and the authority, as long as the president approves it, to embed themselves with more regular units like National Guard units or regular Army units or even federal units. This is why ICE is not technically federal law enforcement, because they deal with foreign nationals. So they're more on the military side. Thus, they would be considered paramilitary. And because they're paramilitary and commonly referred to as federal troops rather than federal law enforcement, spec ops can operate with them. And these are the special ops that Q was talking about. They're happening again. We're going through another round again where these organizers and these funders are being snatched up. Okay. Where are we at? False leaks have been made to retain several within the confines of the United States to prevent extradition and special operator necessity. So these false leaks would be like the fake beef with Elon Musk that Trump had. Remember when Elon Musk said something about Trump being in the Epstein files, and then a week later he walked it back and him and Trump was friends again? Or how about this? The talk about beef with Iran and Trump taking an aggressive military posture with Iran. That's another false leak because Trump is actually aiding the Ayatollah, because the Ayatollah is dealing with a serious Mossad infestation, just like we are over here. And our military, if deployed to Iran, is going to be used in support of the Iranian security forces, not against them. But the reason why it's going to be broadcast as if we're operating against them is, again, so the Israeli Mossad agents and high levels within our government don't start to feel threatened and run away. Because if they feel threatened and they feel like Trump is working against them and not with them, they're going to flee. So the false leaks are necessary to confine them within the United States and prevent extradition, which means making deals with other countries that have extradition treaties to have those countries arrest that individual and turn them over to us. And it says extradition and special operator necessity. Special operator necessity is utilized. The special operations are utilized in countries that don't have extradition treaties, where they would send in special ops dressed in civilian clothes. They would scope out the target, locate the target, and then they would put on their tactical gear and do a midnight raid and snatch and grab. And then they would put that person on a helicopter or a boat and transport them to a neighboring country that does have an extradition treaty. And then they would have that country take that person into custody and then turn them over to the United States legally on paper. Now, with Nicolas Maduro, it was a little bit different. They didn't have to transport him for extradition because he was a special high-level target that had committed direct acts of war against the United States. He wasn't your average two-bit criminal or criminal politician. He was a world leader that was governing a he was basically the supreme dictator of a complete narco state, where the entire heads of the government and the military were all drug dealers. Rest assured, the safety and well-being of every man, woman, and child of this country is being exhausted in full. However, the atmosphere within the country will unfortunately be divided, as so many have fallen for the corrupt and evil narrative that has long been broadcast. Is that not exactly what we are seeing right now? Where the country is divided between the people that are falling for the narrative and pushing the narrative that ICE bad, Trump bad, and then there's those of us that know better. Is there not division? And who's creating this division? The people that are pushing the ICE bad narrative, because it's based on a lie. It's based on lies. Now, let me give you some insights on the extradition and special operator necessity. I'll give you some personal experience. In the early 2000s, leading up to about 2009, in Guyana, South America, there was this big cocaine exporter that had a shipment line from Guyana to New York City. And if you've been in the streets, you know the coke prices in New York City ain't cheap. And because he was a major importer, he was getting the kilos for like $1,000 a brick in Guyana, shipping them to New York, and then selling them for like $20,000 to $30,000 a brick. So he was making crazy money. So he made so much money that he actually funded a government infrastructure project in Guyana, where from one part of the country to the other, you had to take a ferry across the river. There was no bridge to drive across. So the ferries would ferry cars and people across all day, every day. And he actually funded the construction of a bridge that basically offset the amount of traffic needed to be ferried. It was a small bridge and trucks can't drive on it. So the ferries are still getting business from the trucks. But as far as private cars, people can just drive right over. And that relieved a whole lot of congestion at the ports, right? So it wasn't like he was making all his money and just being a greedy fuck. He was actually reinvesting it back in his country. But this was under Obama, and it's bad, bad, bad. Under Bush and Obama, and it was bad, bad, bad to them. So, and the fact that he was shipping tons of cocaine into the country, that was probably a little off-putting too, right? But anyway, the Obama administration in 2008 issued an arrest warrant for him in New York, but it was a federal warrant. So he ran to Guyana. And when he came back to Guyana, he stayed there for a year before he was finally taken into custody. And in the summer of 2009, I was actually in Guyana with my mom and my sister and my nephew. And while we were there that summer, because, that's where I was born. I grew up over here, but that's where I was born. And we never saw Jehovah's Witnesses. We've been going back and forth since like the 90s, right? 1991, then 96, then I think 99, and, and so on. And then 2005, when my grandmother died, then I went back again in 2009, right? And in all those travels, I had never seen Jehovah's Witnesses, these white boys in pairs on bicycles, scouring the whole city, going door to door, right? But this time in 2009, they were there. And nobody thought anything of it because it's a big Christian country. So nobody was going to give them a hard time, Plus they white folks in a third world country. People was kissing their ass. But me and my cousin went to the park one evening and we were playing basketball, and a group of these white guys were there that pose as Jehovah's Witnesses, but they were all in tip-top shape. And they seem to be, the Mormons. Yeah, Negan. Yeah, you're right. I don't know the fucking difference. I don't study that shit. But nevertheless, we ran a game of basketball with them, and I noticed that they were in extremely good shape. And I don't really remember these Mormons being, Mormons, because they were all white. Jehovah's Witnesses got black people. You're right. They were Mormons. I've never seen Mormons in that good a shape, right? And I thought that was weird. And then after we left, we were done with our vacation and came back. I thought nothing of it. Then I'm back in Florida, and my mom is telling us the story about how those white boys we seen in Guyana were actually U.S. military, and they were there hunting that big cocaine dealer, and they kidnapped him and shipped him over to Trinidad, which does have an extradition treaty, and then they flew him from Trinidad back to New York to face trial. So the special operator necessity thing became, once I read this in Q, it took me right back to that situation, and it dawned on me. That's why they were there pretending to be Mormons, because now they have an excuse to go door to door. They can identify people, and once they identified him and they found out where he was living, they organized a raid, and they raided the house late at night. Nobody even knew about it. Everybody went to bed that night, woke up the next morning, homie was gone, and nobody had a clue what happened. And those Mormons that I was playing ball with at the park that evening, those were the guys that executed that operation. So we can say I've had a close encounter with that special operator necessity when it involves extradition of wanted fugitives in foreign countries. So I thought that would be pretty interesting to share with you guys, just to give you some insights that I've seen this happen, or at least I've come close enough to seeing this happen. Like, I literally saw the Spec Ops guys in country doing their reconnaissance, posing as Mormons. Yeah, but ever since then, Guyana doesn't allow Mormons there anymore. You can't go door to door preaching the word no more, especially if you're white. I thought that was funny. Had that rule been in place beforehand, But anyway, it says, rest assured, the safety and well-being of every man, woman, and child of this country is being exhausted in full. However, the atmosphere within the country will unfortunately be divided, as so many have fallen for the corrupt, evil narrative that has long been broadcast. That will be the Trump bad narrative broadcast for the last 10 years. Now, why would it be necessary for Donald Trump to say the safety and well-being of every man, woman, and child of this country is being exhausted in full? Well, think about what happened in Iran when the sleeper cells were activated. The men, women, and children of that country were not safe, and they were exposed to danger, and many of them lost their lives, got injured, and died in that situation. So for Trump to say, rest assured, the safety and well-being of every man, woman, and child of this country is being exhausted in full, that means there must be a real credible threat to our lives due to the operations that his military is carrying out. And we've deciphered and discovered what that threat is: the sleeper cells. So they're exhausting the safety and well-being of every man, woman, and child is being executed by way of removal of these violent sleeper cells, because they would be the ones to come out of the shadows and start doing us harm. Okay, and the country be divided. We went over that already. We will be initiating the emergency broadcast system, EMS, during this time in an effort to provide a direct message, avoiding the fake news, to all citizens. And a lot of people think that the emergency broadcast system is the shit where the colorful bars pop up on the screen and it goes brr, 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 and then you get the emergency alert message. And that could be it. But what I've come to learn is Q is the emergency broadcast system. The Q boards is the emergency broadcast system, and the Q posts are the emergency messages. And that was made evident by the Q post containing Red 1 through Red 6, because it starts off saying EAM loyalists. That means emergency alert message to American loyalists. This is what's slated to happen. And they predicted Trump's removal from Twitter a whole year before it freaking happened. Okay. Organizations and or people that wish to do us harm during this time will be met with swift fury. SWAT team raids, special operations raids, black bags over their heads. Certain laws have been pre-lifted to provide our great military the necessary authority to handle and conduct these operations at home and abroad. And what have we been seeing? Paramilitary federal troops operating at home and actual military, full-blown, full-fledged military operating abroad. And the laws that have been pre-lifted would be the posse comitatus laws, which Obama actually pre-lifted in order to use the military. He was planning under Hillary to use the military to go after American gun owners. So they pre-lifted posse comitatus, and now Trump is using that infrastructure to his own, for his own devices. He's turning their weaponized system against them. POTUS will be well insulated, protected on Air Force One and abroad, specific locations classified while these operations are conducted due to the nature of the entrenchment. It is time to take back our country and make America great again. Let us salute and pray for the brave men and women in uniform who will undertake this assignment to bring forth peace, unity, and return power to the people. It is our hope that this message reaches enough people to make a meaningful impact. We cannot yet telegraph this message through normal methods for reasons I'm sure everyone here can understand. And what would be that reason, guys, if you do understand? Well, the reason would be the nature of the entrenchment. The enemy entrenchment is among us. They have access to the same mainstream media as we do. So none of this can be broadcast on the mainstream media. Otherwise, it'd be broadcast directly to our enemies, and they would know what time it is. Follow the questions from the previous threads and remain calm. The primary targets are within DC and remain at the top on both sides. And what do we see happening with Trump in DC? We're seeing Democrats and Republicans turning against him. We're seeing the uniparty. We're seeing the both sides. How about the AIPAC thing, right? The spillover in the streets will be quickly shut down. Look for more false flags. Stay alert, be vigilant, and above all, please pray. And we've witnessed 3 false flags so far. How they try to spin the Renee Good shooting into, something bad that ICE did, and that guy didn't have a right to defend himself. That was a false flag, that attempt to spin that. Alex Preddy, the same thing. That was a false flag attempting to spin that. And the third false flag is Ilhan Omar having Mr. Skeet sprayed that apple cider vinegar on her to make a big show about it. Now, this last part touches on the spiritual aspect of things. And remember, Trump himself wrote this, so Trump is well aware of these spiritual attacks. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. Love is patient, love is kind. God bless my fellow Americans. He didn't write that in there for nothing. That was your indicator that this is more than just left versus right, Democrat versus Republican. This is literally good versus the most diabolical evil there is. And if you want to know how diabolical it is, check this out right here. You remember that show To Catch a Predator with Chris Hansen? Well, this is what Chris Hansen says. To Catch a Predator host Chris Hansen says almost every sting he's set up now catches illegal aliens. We cannot do a sting without catching somebody who is in this country illegally. I wonder why the mainstream media isn't reporting on this. So the thing about these illegal aliens is the countries that they come from, pedophilia is a normal part of life. And even in those countries where the government has outlawed it, the men that are tasked with enforcing these laws, remember, they're a part of that perverted culture too. So they don't take so they don't take as much offense to it as we would over here, because that's not really a part of our culture. That's more like a dark part of the subculture, right? The underbelly of society, so to speak. But these guys that have been let in through the open borders, they're over here getting paid by the government and having free reign. And now a bunch of them are getting caught in pedophile stings, because that's what they're over here doing. They're over here living out their fucking fantasies. They're sick, demented, perverted fantasies. And I thought this was crazy when I saw it. I thought this was crazy when I saw it, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. But when you think about it, how many of these illegals have been busted for rape and sexual assault crimes and shit? Well, it kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense that they'll be popping up on Chris Hansen's stings. And it would also make sense that the mainstream media isn't reporting on this, because the mainstream media has an agenda to get American citizens to support these illegals being here. And this is what they out here doing. And Chris Hansen is catching these motherfuckers left and right. And we don't hear a peep about it in the mainstream news. Now, here's the thing. These guys that Chris Hansen is catching in these stings, they didn't just wake up one day and decide to be pedophiles and were so unfortunate to get caught up by Chris Hansen. These guys have been doing this shit their whole lives. So if they were bold enough to get caught up in a Chris Hansen sting, you have to wonder, how many other children did they victimize in this country? And the worst part about it is, I guarantee you the majority of children that they do victimize are children of their own community and their own demographic, because that's who's in proximity. So while the mainstream media got all these dummies out here in the streets advocating for the Latino community, meaning the illegal aliens, they're not advocating for the poor little Latino children that are getting raped and molested by these illegal aliens. We don't hear a word about the children. Just like we didn't hear a word about the children that were trafficked at the border and abandoned at the border and disappeared at the border. Nick Sorter says, Trump wins in Minnesota. A federal judge has just refused to block President Trump's surge of DHS agents into the state for immigration operations. Major loss for Tim Walz, Mayor Frey, and Keith Ellison. The deportations will continue. So Tim Walz, Frey, and Ellison, on behalf of the state of Minnesota, tried to file an injunction against the Trump administration to prevent him from sending more ICE agents into Minnesota. Excuse me. Well, a federal judge has okayed the surge, and the mass deportations will continue. And what we're seeing in these mass deportations, well, what's being demonstrated in these mass deportations is something that most people aren't really paying attention to. Mass arrests. That's what's happening. Mass arrests. This is another round of mass arrests. And these mass arrests are targeting the worst of the worst. But of course, they're mopping up whoever else they can in the meantime, because they're all illegal aliens and none of them should be here. And Bovino, I'm sure you guys seen the post on social media where people were laughing and bragging about how the Trump administration, how Trump has demoted Bovino and reassigned him, right? In the wake of the Alex Preddy shooting. Well, that's a lie. Bovino was sent to Los Angeles in a lateral move And Tom Homan is taking over ICE operations in Minnesota. So Bavino basically got laterally moved down to California and replaced by Tom Homan, who's a higher up. So Bavino did his job, and now Tom Homan is going to take over operations in Minnesota because they're probably about to go after, some more dangerous folks and possibly some of those politicians. And Bavino is now operating in Los Angeles. So he still has his job. He's just not overseeing Minnesota anymore. And what's happening in Los Angeles, it seems to mirror what we've been seeing in Minneapolis. And it turns out that other private reporters, guerrilla journalists, as we would call them, have been exposing massive government taxpayer fraud schemes in California that dwarf what we saw in Minneapolis. I'll give you an example. Excuse me. Within a 4-block radius in the city of Los Angeles, there are 43 registered hospice clinics in a 4-block radius, all of which are collecting millions of dollars of taxpayer funds every year. I mean, are there that many people dying in Los Angeles that they need 43, I think it was like 42 or 43 hospice clinics or hospice centers in a 4-block radius? Because that sounds like fraud to me. And that's just one example. And people are posting these videos all over YouTube and social media, so you can go look them up for yourself and see the level of fraud that's being discovered in California. And ICE is going in there to get all these people out of there. And, well, the establishment is trying to use the same tactics they used in Minnesota to push back on the Trump administration's efforts to put a stop to all this crime. But something different is happening, though. You don't hear, excuse me, I think Karen Bass was out there and Maxine Waters and shit trying to encourage the rioters. But you don't hear Gavin Newsom talking to the rioters so much like you heard Tim Walz, right? That's because Gavin Newsom is under the microscope already. So LAPD and I think California Highway Patrol are now assisting in the ICE operations with no objections. So things should go a little bit smoother in the California ops than it did in Minneapolis, but there's still mass resistance from the agitators in the streets. Hundreds gather for another anti-ICE protest in downtown LA after 8 arrests on Friday. And Trump had given instructions to ICE to not play games with these people and arrest as many people as you can. And if they try to attack you and inflict harm, do something back to them. Trump really said, he literally said, if they hit you, hit them back. So Trump's not playing with these motherfuckers. And he didn't use such aggressive rhetoric when it comes to the people in Minnesota, because that was kind of like the test run to see how it would go over in the public, see how bad the media would lie and how much of those lies would the public buy into. And I guess now that he's seen that he's got the support of the public, the majority of the public, he's ramping up the rhetoric. And you know what? I think he's right, because the agitator crowd in LA is a lot different than the agitator crowd in Minneapolis. In Minneapolis, it's a bunch of soy boy, cracked out white boys. But in LA, it's them vatos and them gangbangers and those violent motherfuckers that got let out of prison by Kamala Harris. Well, she probably wasn't there at the time, but whoever the AG is, Gavin Newsom, fuck it. And Trump has a special disdain for these Mexican gangbangers because a lot of them are tied to the cartels, and Trump hates the cartels. And if they're not directly tied to the cartels, a lot of the drugs that they deal comes from the cartel. So they still have some sort of ties to the cartel. And I think that if there is going to be shooting, it's going to happen in Los Angeles because it's a big city and they got numbers. AIR 7 was overhead on Friday as a group of protesters began targeting federal agents guarding the loading dock of the federal detention center. The crowd threw trash and debris towards shielded agents, video shows. The agents fired back with pepper balls and irritant sprays. In total, 8 people were arrested during the chaos, according to LAPD. One person was taken into custody for assault with a deadly weapon on an officer. One was arrested for a curfew violation, and 6 people were arrested for failure to disperse. Again, on Saturday, dispersal orders were issued, and an unlawful assembly was declared near the federal building. Air 7 video shows fireworks going off near the intersection of Alameda Street and Temple Street. Federal agents deployed tear gas after agitators in the crowd outside began throwing fireworks, rocks, and bottles at them, according to police. So they haven't been there very long, and it's already getting violent, right? Now, this is one of those politicians right here, Cynthia Gonzalez, and I have a video. Let me see if I can actually find it, though. I have a video. Now, where would it be? Give me 2 seconds. See if I can find it. So I know how far down I have to scroll because I saved a lot of videos. Okay. So we are 3, 6, 9, 12. It's the 13th video in. Okay. There we go. I'll just have to open up Instagram and pull that up for you. But in June 2025, Cynthia Gonzalez, the vice mayor of Cudahy, a small city in Los Angeles County, faced intense scrutiny and a federal investigation after posting a social media video that appeared to encourage local street gangs, specifically the 18th Street and Florencia 13 gangs, to defend their turf against U.S. immigration and customs enforcement agents. Now, here's what she failed to realize. Those are the feds. That's their turf. Here are the key details of the incident, the video, and rhetoric. In a now deleted video, Vice Mayor Gonzalez questioned why local gangs were not acting while their neighborhoods were invaded by what she termed the biggest gang there is, referring to ICE. So she's siding with street gangs and calling government forces a gang, legitimate government forces. That's interesting. Controversy and response. The Department of Homeland Security condemned the comments as despicable and accused her of calling for violence against law enforcement. The Los Angeles Police Protective League, LAPPL, called for her resignation and prosecution, noting that the gangs she mentioned have a history of killing police officers. Good. You see, even the cops are like, nah, bitch. Investigation. Reports indicated an active FBI investigation into the video and its implications. Defense, an attorney for Gonzalez, stated that she was challenging the community to engage in peaceful organizing and did not intend to encourage violence. Really? Yeah, it's not what it seems. It's always that with these hoes. Context. The incident occurred during heightened tensions and protests in Los Angeles surrounding increased ICE raids and the deployment of the National Guard to manage unrest in the area. Separately, DHS officials reported in October 2025 that Mexican cartels and gangs were offering bounties for the assassination of ICE and CBP agents CBP agents in the US. Yeah, I remember hearing about that. I'm sure you guys remember hearing about that too. So there are politicians there that are openly calling for violence. Oddly enough, it's a Mexican politician calling on the Mexican gangs. I think that's kind of racist, but and when I say racist, I mean like boule level racist, where she's setting her own people up for failure, and trying to make it seem like it's some noble thing. But I want you guys to see this too. This is another one, but it's an actual video. Come on, IG, what we doing? There we go. Okay, are we at it? There we go. Okay. There it is. So this guy right here is a mayor of, I guess, another one of those small cities in LA County. And he too is doing the same thing that that woman did, calling for the gangs to go to war with ICE. And my comment here, if you can see it, it says, and follow me on Instagram. This is my name if you guys don't know, citizen_man1218. And I made 1218 because December 2018 is when I started my YouTube channel and created the Citizen Man handle and everything. So there you go. And I said, he's setting them up. Everyone goes to jail but him. And that's what these crooked politicians do. So if you're a gangbanger in the street and you can't trust your fellow gangbangers, you should have even less trust for these politicians. Listen to this shit. Just listen to it, and then we'll talk about it.
Calling for gangs to fight ICE. You can't make this stuff up.
My name is Rogelio Martinez. I am calling all 55 gangs in my beautiful city. I expect a gang leader from every gang.
Your city got 55 gangs, and you have the nerve to call it beautiful? Oh man, he's as delusional as his bottom row of teeth. Jeez, just all out of whack.
All 55 gangs, and I'm not going to name them by name. I'm calling the Latino gangs. I'm calling the Cambodian gangs. I'm calling the Filipino gangs. I'm calling the Black gangs. I'm calling the Pacific Islander gangs. I'm calling all gang leaders to meet me right here, Long Beach City Hall, this coming Monday. Why Monday? Specifically, I need you to be here to meet me in person to take back this city.
A California mayor is literally calling for gangs to fight ICE. You can't make this stuff up.
My name is Rogelio Martinez. I am calling all 55 gangs in my beautiful city. I expect a gang leader from every gang, all 55 gangs, and I'm not going to name them by name. I'm calling.
So these mayors that got a little too big for their britches, because they making money. They dealing with the gang members and the drug cartels and all that shit. So they getting money, and ain't nobody touching them because they own the police. You know what I'm saying? So they getting money. They're out here incriminating themselves, and I hope they all go to jail. I hope they all go to jail. And you know what's crazy? Any gang leader that listens to these assholes and shows up is an idiot and deserves to go to jail. And honestly, I think this guy, he feels untouchable. So he's calling on gang leaders to come meet with him so they can conspire to impede the federal government, right? And I believe that when these gang members show up, these gang leaders show up, what's going to happen is when the heat starts to come down on him, he's going to start telling on everybody else. And now that he had everybody on camera because they showed up to his little stupid meeting, they can all easily be identified. And then before you know it, like I said in my comment, Everybody goes to jail but him. He looked like one of them ratatouille ass motherfuckers, don't he? Like he just be telling. Just telling. And again, if you have a mayor that's so bold that he could call on gang members to come do his bidding and fight the federal government, like what kind of business they got going on behind the scenes? And again, to you gang members out there, if you're listening, if you listen to these Democrats, I got a whole video about it. It's a couple minutes long, but in that video, I clearly stressed believing these people's propaganda will get you killed. It will. Remember all the people that believe the propaganda about the coof and about the vaccine? Now, how many of them died because of that shit? Right. Or how about the transgenital thing? You know how many transgenders commit suicide? They have the highest suicide rate out of everybody in the country, every group in the country. Yeah, the slaps, Jason M. Schmidt. They stick you in the arm and you got to slap that shit like heroin. It's the slaps. And you know why those trans gentlemen end up committing suicide? Because they end up lonely. Because they get gassed up by the liberal propaganda that if you're a sassy gay man, you should become a woman, and they turn themselves into women. And then guess what? Straight men don't want to date them because straight men don't fuck dudes, and gay men don't want to date them because gay men want to date other men, not women. And so they end up alone. They end up being prostitutes and sex toys their whole life. And then eventually they get tired of it. They run out of drugs and they kill themselves. Why? Because they believe the liberal propaganda. You should have just been a sassy fag and stayed that way. At least you would have had a husband like Don Lemon did. If Don Lemon can find a husband, you can too, Mr. Dainty Pants. Okay? Don't start turning yourself into a woman and shit. That doesn't work. It's a failed experiment. But look at how many people lost their lives behind that bullshit. Or how about the cosmetic surgery? You know, that's more liberal garbage. How many women done died trying to get BBLs? You feel me? So listening to these idiot liberals will eventually get you killed. Okay? It will ruin your life at the very least. And at most, it will get you killed, and it has gotten millions of people killed. In fact, more people have died from the coof slaps than the coof itself. And by the slaps, I mean that needle. So just remember that, okay? Just remember that. When you get to wondering, like, what the hell is this Citizen Man guy talking about? When you get to thinking that, just remember that statistic. More people died from the vaccine than the actual disease. What up, Barnes? Barnes says Virginians have learned the hard way. There are no moderate Democrats. No, there are not. The Democratic Party is a monolith. So all the bullshit you see them pushing in other places is the exact same bullshit they're going to bring to your state, your city, and your town, because that's the agenda. They don't allow people in the party to have a voice who dares to disagree with anything they say. They are vindictive, they are narcissistic, and they are demonic. They're like a bunch of Jezebels, even the men. They're like a bunch of narcissistic biatches. And the minute you disagree with them, you're out of here. You are excommunicated from the cult. So if they carry a D by their names, you already know what that's associated with. Damn, 57 new taxes imposed by the governor. And Mom Donnie's over there in New York trying to do the same shit. You see? But people they're not able to make these connections. They really think that these Democrats are free-thinking individuals that when they get into office, they could pass whatever policies they want. No, they have to toe the party line, and they have to push the agenda. They don't have a choice. They don't have an option. They have to do that. And if they try to expose that it's a monolith, they'll probably lose their lives. They'll lose their jobs if they don't go along with it, but they'll lose their lives if they try to expose the program. So they're essentially held intellectually hostage. I mean, you see how these liberals act when the conservatives try to have discussions on college campuses, right? Flipping tables and shit and getting mad, trying to fight people and run people off of campus and shit. Like, these are violent motherfuckers. Because they don't like anybody that disagrees with them. They're taught that anybody who disagrees is bad. They're taught, they're fed this propaganda, and they're told that this is the truth, the gospel, and the only truth, and anybody that goes against this truth is a bad person, because this truth is based in morality. That's what they believe, and that's what they think. And in their minds, they use that to justify their demonic behavior because they think they're doing something good. And they're all like that. There ain't no separation. There's no free thought. This is why they've been able to see so much power across the country, even though they push the most ridiculous agendas, the most ridiculous policies. Because one, they prey on the mentally weak, and two, they use emotional manipulation, which is extremely effective. Even with intelligent people, it's extremely effective. And because they have this monolithic ideology, everybody's on board. So whatever the plan is, everybody executes. I mean, we saw it with the election fraud in 2020 from state to state, county to county to county. People who don't even know each other or had contact with each other were using the exact same means and methods to cheat in the election, right? Bring in the fake ballots, use the voting machines to flip ballots, dump legitimate Trump ballots in the trash. They were all doing it because they were all with the program. You see, if they had freedom of thought, it would have been very difficult to do that, because somebody would have grown a conscience and said, hey, we can't do this, and they would have blown the whistle on it. So in order to avoid that, they have to be very hard-lined about maintaining the monolithic ideology amongst their followers. It's like Jim Jones in Jonestown. He had to shoot people trying to escape because everybody had to stay and be on board. And the Republican Party has had a difficult time with maintaining political strongholds across the country, especially these detrimental places, these very, very important districts like these major cities. And the reason why is because there's too much freedom of thought. So from Republican to Republican, you'll hear different ideas. You'll hear different policies, different intentions that can actually be done. So there's no monolith there where if you're a Republican, this is what you expect from your Republican congressman. Because sometimes we'll get a Republican in there and they'll side with the Democrats. Or sometimes we'll get a Republican in there and they'll want to do their own thing. Or sometimes we'll get a Republican in there and they'll do what they're supposed to do, what we expect them to do, what they promised they would do. So there's all these varying degrees of conservative representation that we get, that we cannot have one big homogenous political movement like the Democrats have, because the Democrats are an ideological monolith. In fact, they're a cult. Right, Jason M. Schmidt. If you're a Democrat, these are your talking points every day. Yeah, I heard about the funding thing. I was actually going to talk about that on the next show, because hopefully by then they'd have it resolved so I could give the whole rundown and how we got to where we are. But nevertheless, let me read this post by Trump pertaining to the LA riots and the ICE operations. I have instructed Secretary of Homeland, what the hell? I've instructed Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem that under no circumstances are we going to participate in various poorly run Democrat cities with regard to their protests and or riots unless and until they ask us for help. We will, however, guard and very powerfully so any and all federal buildings that are being attacked by these highly paid lunatics, agitators, and insurrectionists. Please be aware that I have instructed ICE and or Border Patrol to be very forceful in this protection of federal government property. There will be no spitting in the faces of our officers. There will be no punching or kicking the headlights of our cars, and there will be no rock or brick throwing at our vehicles or at our patriot warriors. If there is, those people will suffer an equal or more consequence. In the meantime, by copy of this statement, I am informing local governments, as I did in Los Angeles when they were rioting at the end of the Biden term, that you must protect your own state and local property. In addition, it is your obligation to also protect our federal property, buildings, parks, and everything else. We are there to protect federal property only as a backup, in that it is local and state responsibility to do so. Last night in Eugene, Oregon, these criminals broke into a federal building and did great damage, also scaring and harassing the hardworking employees. Local police did nothing in order to stop it. We will not let that happen anymore. If local governments are unable to handle the insurrectionists, agitators, and anarchists, we will immediately go to the location where such help is requested and take care of the situation very easily and methodically, just as we did the Los Angeles riots 1 year ago, where the police chief said that we couldn't have done it without the help of the federal government. Therefore, to all complaining local governments, governors and mayors, let us know when you are ready and we will be there. But before we do so, you must use the word please. Yo, Trump is the illest. Trump is the illest. He said, you better say please too, motherfucker. Remember that I stated in the strongest language, beware, ICE, Border Patrol, or if necessary, our military will be extremely powerful and tough in the protection of our federal property. We will not allow our courthouses, federal buildings, or anything else under our protection to be damaged in any way, shape, or form. I was elected on a policy of border control, which has now been perfected. National security and law and order. That's what America wants, and that's what America is getting. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I want you guys to notice something. He did a little coding in here, right? You notice there's nothing capitalized until it gets to please. Please beware, ICE. I think that's a message to ICE, letting them know to beware. And then it says law and order down here at the bottom. Please beware, ICE, law and order. I think that's a warning to ICE to let them know that they are going to be engaged at some point by armed individuals. Because that sounds a lot like a warning to me. I don't know about you, but that's what it sounds like to me. What's up, everybody? I forgot I didn't have my camera on this whole time. A whole hour and a half. Didn't even have my damn camera on. And you know what else, too? A whole hour and a half, and we only got one donation so far. Hold on. Always got to check both Cash Apps. Yep. So we got one person on the board so far. Am I not doing a good enough job? I don't know. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I need to take a trip out to one of these cities and do some on-the-ground broadcasting. Maybe I'll do that. I got time. Now, you remember when I was telling you guys about these fake Republicans, these infiltrators that just pop up on the scene and call themselves Republicans and then side with the Democrats to push the narrative, to make it seem like this narrative is reasonable because now it's bipartisan. Democrats and Republicans are saying it. So check this out. It says Chris Medell drops out of the race for Minnesota governor. He says, I can't look my daughters in the eye and say I'm running as a Republican when they're pulling over Hispanics and Asians because of the color of the skin and what they look like. I did not sign up for that. That is liberal ho speak. That's what that is. And nobody important says, I'm a Minnesota Republican and have been involved for over 20 years. I have never heard of this guy until he dropped out. And that's your telltale right there to let you know that this guy is a plant. He is an infiltrator, and we got plenty of those. There's this one Latina chick down in Texas that's absolutely insane. And she refers to Muslims as dirty Muslims and, you know, uses a lot of strong rhetoric, but it comes off as performative and over the top. Almost like she's trying to solidify herself as this nasty, abrasive character, which in reality she's not because it looks so fake, and trying to make that the image of Republicans, which is exactly what Democrats say Republicans are, right? A bunch of mean, abrasive, racist bigots. So here comes this woman, and she's going to start, you know, speaking in every offensive possible way that the left could use against Republicans to paint Republicans in that light. And, you know, become one of the top voices of the Republican Party. I don't trust her. I don't trust her because she's just too over the top. And even if she is sincere in what she's saying, I don't think she'll be a good choice for office because she seems too extreme. She comes off as one of those Republicans that say we need to ban abortion in the case of rape and incest or the life of the mother and this and that. And, you know, and I'm like, I'm for banning abortion because it's been used as a method of extermination. But there are certain specific cases where the termination of the pregnancy is necessary. And here's the crazy part. There's doctors and surgeons that have terminated. There's one doctor in particular that has terminated over 300 pregnancies, and the babies did not have to be killed to do it. By terminating the pregnancy, it simply means removing the baby from the womb. And that's not even considered an abortion because the baby lives. Oh, shit. Shout out to my brother Todd. Shout out to my brother Todd on the Venmo. He said, I owe you for a few. Nah, man, you don't owe me nothing, brother, but I appreciate that support, Todd. So we got 2 supporters. All right. All right. You know what I'm saying? But there are people out there that say, oh, the Republicans want to ban abortion even if the woman gets raped or it's incest or whatever. Mind you, those are like a minute percentage of the cases. The vast majority of abortion cases are cases where it's used as a form of contraception. And the cases where reasonable people would consider it, like if, you know, somebody got raped and they didn't want to have the rapist baby, I can understand that. I can totally understand that. I wouldn't, you know, I don't know if I would personally agree with that decision, but I can understand it. It's not unreasonable. You know what I'm saying? Or cases where if the woman goes through with the pregnancy, her medical condition might cause her to die. I can understand that because it's a matter of life and death. You know what I'm saying? Or a case where the odds of survival for the child are, you know, negative. I can, you know what I'm saying? Like these are reasonable circumstances to which I don't necessarily agree, but I can understand. But there's some conservatives that are like, we don't give a fuck. That baby stays the full term. You go to jail if you try to do anything else. Doctor goes to jail. That's extremism. That is unreasonable, and that's extremism. And that's the way the left tries to paint the conservatives out to be. But again, we are not a monolith. So we have conservatives that are more moderate on the subject, and we have conservatives that are completely far right on that subject because we're free thinkers. Whereas the Democrats are like, if you're against abortion, you're evil. So we're all for abortion no matter what. And that's wrong. Shout out to my man Mike on the Cash App, my man Michael G. Appreciate that. He says, good show. Appreciate the Cash App, my brother. So now we got 3. We got 3 on the board. That was cool. You see, a little begging goes a long way sometimes, man. Just a little bit of begging. I don't do too much begging. But I'm glad you guys are thoughtful enough to, support the show. All right, so let's move on. So the Trump DOJ just released 3 million of the Epstein files, and now the leftists are saying it's to distract from the ICE controversy. Last week, the left said they cooked up the ICE raids to distract from not releasing the Epstein files. I couldn't be a leftist. My brain just couldn't do all the jumping through hoops that it requires. I prefer ideological consistency. And you see, this goes to prove how programmed these liberals are, because you literally have to be psychologically programmed in order to just change like that at the drop of a hat, at the drop of a headline. You know what I'm saying? And of course, with the new drop of the Epstein files, they're trying to throw Trump in there, but it's other people talking about Trump. Have you not had people that couldn't keep your name out of their mouths too? Nowhere in all 3 million of those files is there Trump making any statements about doing anything. It's all pedophiles talking about Trump. And in most of those cases, they're talking about how he's going to be a witness against them. How about that? That's the part they won't tell you. And you notice with this new drop of Epstein files, you don't hear too much in the mainstream media about them trying to link Trump to it, because it vindicates Trump, actually. But there is one person in Trump's camp currently that has been mentioned in the Epstein files. And once I reveal to you who that person is, you'll understand why Trump has him in the cabinet. But the Pentagon warns attack on USA homeland threat. Now, back on January 2026, January 26th of this year, the 26th, Pentagon warns future wars may hit U.S. soil as direct military threat grow. The direct military threats grow. All right. So there's a lot of rumors of war, and there's a lot of talk of the U.S. homeland here on U.S. soil suffering attacks. And you know what those attacks would be? And this is why the Pentagon put out this warning. This would be the sleeper cells activating, because they're constantly losing ground. And now they're going to start losing puppets and losing money, because the fraud is being discovered. The sleeper cells are being mopped up, and all the evidence is being collected. And before you know it, they'll have enough evidence to do one clean sweep through the country and disappear and black bag everybody. So the Pentagon is of the impression that as a result, and because of Trump's military action with Iran, as a result, there will be retaliation from the remaining sleeper cells here in America. It'll kind of be like their last gasp. Well, we got to fire off some of this ammo and take some lives before they mop us all up and there's nobody left to do it. So we got to kick something off. And I believe that they're going to try to kick something off. And if I had my guess, if I were them, how I would plan it, the midterms is coming up. So let's go target conservative voters in conservative districts and shoot up their neighborhoods and shoot their shit up, and bring a heavily armed enough group that even if there is resistance from the homeowners, who more than likely might own guns, we'll be able to overpower and overwhelm them. Or they could put on military uniforms and go out in these liberal cities and shoot these protesters so the media can blame Trump for it. So when you see the Pentagon putting out warnings like this, it's best to pay attention, especially when it's not being widely reported. You see, the name of the game is you got to pay attention. There's a saying, right? And it's not what they say, it's what they don't say. So you got to pay attention to the shit that's going on that they're not reporting on, because that's where the real threat is. That's where the real danger is, or that's where the real answers are. Now, Elon Musk tweeted this. He says, "No one pushed harder than me to have the Epstein files released, and I'm glad that has finally happened. I have very little correspondence with Epstein and declined repeated invitations to go to his island or fly on his Lolita Express, but was well aware that some email correspondence with him could be misinterpreted and used by detractors to smear my name. I don't care about that. But what I do care about is that we at least attempt to prosecute those who committed serious crimes with Epstein, especially regarding heinous exploitation of underage girls." And again, if there was anything in there that implicated Trump, under the 4 years of Biden, they would have released that shit in a hurry. And they're trying to implicate Trump because they want to discredit Trump. They want to continue the Trump bad narrative. Now he's the racist that's targeting all the brown people with his federal Gestapo, and he's a pedophile in the Epstein files. That's the impression they want to paint in your mind. So now they're casting the propaganda spell to have you actually believe the words of pedophiles over the actual facts in the document that show the pedophiles talking about the guy that snitched on them. And they're trying to use that as a way to claim Trump was involved with Epstein. Mind you, Trump flew on Epstein's plane maybe once or twice, I think twice, from Florida back to New York, and then from New York to DC. And that happened, I think the last flight Trump took on the plane was the year before Epstein even owned the island. And that was the same year that Trump found out about Epstein trying to holler at a 14-year-old girl at Mar-a-Lago who happened to be the daughter of one of Trump's employees. And Trump lost his shit, kicked Epstein out, banned him from all his clubs and all his hotels and all of his venues. Anything Trump, Epstein was banned from. And pressed charges, basically had charges pressed on him and testified against him. So Trump's been on Epstein's neck since way back when, and this all happened in 2009, the whole case. So for them to try to push the narrative now that Trump was somehow in league with Epstein literally makes no sense, because all the other presidents that we know were in league with Epstein, they didn't indict him. They didn't even mention his name. Trump made Epstein a whole issue and indicted his ass and had the military snatch him out of that jail when they claimed he killed himself. So for them to even try to make the claim that Trump was ever down with Epstein, they would have to think you're a goddamn moron to even begin to believe that shit. Because again, if he was really down with Epstein, there would have been no need for him to indict Epstein. It's like, how's a motherfucker go to jail and then everybody somehow gets mad at the person that put that motherfucker in jail? How does that make any sense? Especially if the person put in jail is actually guilty. Concerned Citizen says, isn't it logical to think all of them were in the Epstein list, both Democrats and Republicans, including Trump? No, I understand there's Democrats and Republicans in the Epstein list, but it would be more illogical to think Trump would be included in that, because Trump was the one that indicted the motherfucker. And what was it? 8 years before he indicted, or 10 years before he actually indicted him, had him indicted, he was in court snitching on him, testifying against him. I'm just saying, that doesn't sound like the behavior of somebody that's down with somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I got a friend that sniffs a lot of cocaine and shit, and at some point he gets busted with the cocaine and I snitch on him, or we both get pulled over in the car, the cops find the coke, and I tell the cops it's his coke, lock his bitch ass up. I told him to get off that stupid shit. How can anyone ever claim that I was doing coke with him? That would make no sense. That would make no sense. Because either we'd both go down for the coke, or one person would agree to take the charge for that coke. But it wouldn't be a conflict of stories where I'm saying the coke is his and he's saying the coke ain't his. You know what I'm saying? And then I show up to court and testify against him. I'm just saying that makes no sense at all. Or how about this? This company owns different chain stores, right? And there's this one employee that's worked at this store for 20 years, or this group of employees led by one employee that's worked there for 20 years. And all 20 years they've been there, they just been stealing money. And this one location's been losing money like crazy. But for some reason, the manager always manages to balance the books, even though this money keeps going missing and the inventory depletions don't match the incoming revenue. Right? And then one day that manager retires and then a new manager comes in. And that new manager goes about a year or two and he's noticing these discrepancies between the inventory and the revenue. And he comes to the conclusion that somebody's stealing. So he fires everybody and hires a whole new crew. And now the store is profitable again. How can anybody ever claim that that manager that fired all the thieves was profiting from the stealing? You see what I'm saying? That's how illogical that is. Now, the past manager that was there for 20 years while this was going on, it'll be more logical to say he was profiting from the theft because he did nothing about it. He allowed it to continue. But the manager that did something about it and fired everybody, it just simply wouldn't be logical to claim that he was in on the theft. Concerned Citizen says there's a theory going around that Trump has to attack Iran so they don't release his name on the Epstein list. What says you, Citizen Man? That's bullshit. That's bullshit. One, because his name has already been released on several documents in the Epstein's list where it's nothing but pedophiles mentioning his name, and none of which is in a positive light. That's number one. And number two, I already explained in detail the Iran situation, but I guess I can go over it one more time. Iran is infested with Israeli Mossad sleeper agents, and those are the same sleeper cells that killed a bunch of protesters to blame the Iranian government. So now that the Iranian government is being blamed, Trump is posturing against the Iranian government when in fact he's going to collaborate with the Iranian government in order to target the rest of those sleeper cells within Iran. So the whole America is going to war with Trump is going to war with the Ayatollah. It's a false narrative. It's a false leak. Trump is actually going to be assisting the Ayatollah in wiping out the sleeper cells. But he has to take an aggressive anti-Iran posture because if the sleeper cells are against the Ayatollah Khomeini, right? And America is being projected in the media as if they're against the Ayatollah Khomeini, that opens up the possibility for the U.S. forces to acquire intelligence from the sleeper cells by posing as their allies and maintaining communications with them. So the U.S. has to posture as if they're against the Ayatollah. So when those lines of communications with the sleeper cells start to open up and the U.S. starts pretending as if, yeah, we're going to coordinate with you to get this guy out, now the U.S. knows who these people are and where they're at. You forward that information to the the Iranian government, to the Ayatollah and his security forces, and their security forces now got the drop on the sleeper cells. So Trump is there to assist with the sleeper cells, but he has to pose as if he's going to war with the Ayatollah, which he's not. So while the Israeli sleeper cells in Iran are getting wiped out, the Israeli Zionist sleeper cells here in America are getting wiped out. Same time. So it's the same mission in two different places, because we're prepping for a complete overhaul of the political system here with the abolishment of AIPAC, the removal of all the Zionist infiltrators within our government and within our legal system, and a complete breakaway from their Rothschild Federal Reserve banking system as well. And in Iran, they're preparing for an all-out strike on Israel. And in both cases, in America and in Iran, if those moves are made, the sleeper cells are there to counter those moves from within. So if Trump starts kicking all these Zionists out of the government and starts cutting off aid to Israel even more than he already has, and starts talking about abolishing the Federal Reserve and all that, the sleeper cells are going to activate and start killing Americans in mass numbers to put a stop to that agenda. Now Trump's got to focus on these sleeper cells. And mind you, it'll be even nastier if the sleeper cells acquire government uniforms and use those uniforms in those operations, and the media starts projecting it the same way they projected it in Iran, where they falsely claim that these terrorists are actually government agents. That will definitely distract Trump from the agenda. There'll be no way he can ignore that and press forward with abolishment of the Fed and all that. Now all that's got to be put on hold. So the sleeper cells have to be removed, and this is what we're witnessing with these operations. And the release of the Epstein files is basically to vindicate Trump, one, and also you got to pay attention to this too. There's certain individuals that are still under investigation, and those names are redacted, and that by law they have to be redacted in publicly released documents. So in order to get as many names as possible out to the public, every wave of mass arrests, once these investigations are concluded and these names can be unredacted, then you'll see the files being published. That's one reason why it's taken so long, aside from the resistance within the FBI. But another reason is certain individuals are still being blackmailed, not by the deep state, but by Trump. And one of those individuals is none other. Where the fuck is that slide? I got to go way forward. There we go. One of those individuals is none other than Marco Rubio. Jeffrey Epstein sent an email in 2017 stating that Senator Marco Rubio was the original funder for Steele dossier. Marco Rubio currently wields more authority as U.S. Secretary of State than any other secretary in history. Now, if you know anything about the Steele dossier, that was the Russia thing when the Obama administration was actually spying on the Trump campaign and continued to spy on the Trump administration once he won the 2016 election. And if Marco Rubio was involved in the Steele dossier, that means Marco Rubio is going to get ready to go down in flames, right? Because Trump just recently talked about them spying on the president and that it was treason and that justice is coming. And if that's the case and Marco Rubio was directly involved, guess what? If I was Marco Rubio and I had a chance to escape that, getting in that trouble, and all I had to do was be Trump's yes man, guess what the fuck I'm doing? I'm going to be Trump's yes man. And because Marco Rubio was in league with the deep state and Hillary and them, when as Secretary of State, when he goes to meet with these foreign leaders, if threats of military action are required to gain cooperation, and those threats come from a deep state rat like Marco Rubio, those world leaders are more likely to believe it. So his face is the face of, I'm with the deep state and we did this shit before. So if I tell you we're going to do this shit to you now, you better fucking believe it, because we was there in Iraq and we tore up Libya. You remember all that shit? We will fuck you up. And guess what? They'll believe it, because Marco Rubio was directly involved in fucking those countries up. You see what I'm saying? So the blackmail is being used to push Trump's agenda. It's the classic case of keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. Use your leverage. And that's exactly what Trump's doing. He's using his political leverage. Now, George Bush once told a reporter that his mother kept her aborted fetus in a jar as a keepsake. And now the Epstein files show a NYPD detective alleging literally insane things about George Bush that include ritualistic sacrifice, dismembered babies, and the eating of feces. You know who is not surprised by any of these allegations in the slightest? The conspiracy theorists really were right about everything. Satanic ritualistic abuse is front and center for all the normies to see. And that's from Liz Crokin. Now, here's how you know George Bush was down with the Democrats, aside from the pictures of him hugging and kissing on Michelle Obama. His mama was pro-abortion, and not only was she pro-abortion, but she kept the fetus as a trophy. She kept the kid she murdered as a trophy. That's some liberal shit. And George Bush's foreign policy clearly indicated deep state operative. And the ritualistic sacrifice, the murder of the babies and the eating of the feces and all that shit, that's all deep state shit. And these are the people Trump was talking about in Q Clearance Patriot, about them being at the top on both sides. And it ain't just George Bush. He's just one of many. Now, the satanic rituals, right? The satanic rituals we've talked about all the time, but if you try to Google it, the Google AI has actually been trained to downplay it. And it says claims, and I said liberal satanic worship. Claim that liberals or members of the Democratic Party engaged in satanic worship are part of a political narrative and conspiracy theory. You know, every time they use that word, you know there's some truth to it. Often referred to as anti-liberal demonology, or associated, I've never heard that term before, or associated with the QAnon movement. You see how they call it QAnon? Because they don't know shit about Q. It's called Q, and then there's people on the Q boards called Anons. It's not QAnon. But when they call it QAnon, that's a clear indicator that they have no fucking idea what Q's about. They're just selling the Q bad narrative. These claims are not based on factual evidence of literal devil worship, but rather serve as a metaphorical or rhetorical device used by some on the far right to frame political opposition as inherently evil. Claims aren't based on factual evidence. So let me get this straight. Victims speaking out isn't factual evidence. The Epstein files isn't factual evidence. Hunter Biden's laptop isn't factual evidence. The Hillary Clinton files isn't factual evidence. The video frazzle drip clearly showing Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin raping and torturing a 12-year-old girl. That's not factual evidence. Or how about Anthony Weiner's laptop, which had the Clinton files? They said that 9 out of the 12 NYPD detectives that saw that laptop all ended up dead within a year. So no factual evidence when there's actually factual evidence. Origins and key claims. QAnon conspiracy. The idea that a deep state cabal of liberal elite celebrities and Democratic politicians are involved in satanic rituals, child trafficking, and murder was a core tenet of the QAnon conspiracy theory, which gained traction around 2017. Well, they were exposing it from the time of Pizzagate. Shadow gospel. I've literally never heard this term before. Some observers describe this as a shadow gospel, a belief system that frames the Democratic Party as a demonic death cult. Excuse me. Now, you see how they keep talking about the Democratic Party? No. It's all of the Democratic Party and a large faction of the Republican Party. It ain't just one party. Political rhetoric. High-profile figures and some religious leaders have used language labeling Democrats as demons or satanic to describe their policies, particularly regarding LGBTQ plus rights, abortion, and secularism. And those beliefs held by the left are demonic. But nevertheless, contextual factors. Satanic panic roots. These modern accusations share characteristics with the satanic panic of the 1980s and 1990s, where unsubstantiated claims of underground satanic cults were widespread. And you see how they throw in these adjectives? Unsubstantiated. No, it's been substantiated because the Satanists themselves have admitted to the existence of their groups. I mean, are we forgetting about the Church of Satan? Non-theistic Satanism. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as, because non-theistic means godless. But there is no such thing as non-theistic Satanism, because if Satan is your God, then, oh shit, my back itches like crazy. If Satan is your God, then your Satanism is not non-theistic. It's in fact theistic, because Satan would be the deity. While some groups, like the Satanic Temple, use satanic imagery, they are explicitly non-theistic and do not believe in or worship a literal Satan. Well, the Bible does say the devil is a liar, and here they are just fucking lying. TST, that's the Satanic Temple, uses these symbols to advocate for secularism, body autonomy, and the separation of church and state. Wow, what a whitewash. Often in direct opposition to Christian nationalist initiatives. Partisan polarization. Research indicates that accusations of satanic rituals such as child sex abuse are utilized by both sides of the political spectrum to frame opponents, though they have been prominently featured in far-right rhetoric. In summary, the narrative of liberal satanic worship is a political tool, not a reflection of a real-world, widespread religious practice among liberals or Democrats. Well, that's bullshit. Jason M. Schmidt said, my back is itching because I'm talking about Satan. Yeah, he's trying to distract me, right? Of course he is. He's trying to distract me. I could definitely believe that. But you see how they try to downplay it, right? When we all know, like, you can just look at the Democrats' policies and tell that they are satanic. Like, what the fuck business do you have putting tampons in the men's bathrooms in public spaces and in the boys' bathrooms in public schools? That is demonic. Yamoto the Great says, can we take it a little bit further and also say that Democrats are domestic terrorists? I could be wrong, but I believe President Trump paneled them as domestic terrorists. Trump, or labeled, that's what you meant to say, label them as domestic terrorists. Trump is great. I think Trump labeled the agitators in the streets domestic terrorists, but he has not full on labeled the Democratic Party domestic terrorists. I don't think he has yet. But every group in the streets advocating for the Democratic Party basically are domestic terrorists, like Antifa. But nevertheless, let's continue on. Corey DeAngelis says a young woman had her breasts removed at 16 for gender affirming care. Is that not demonic? Her psychologist and surgeon were held liable by a jury in New York. She was just awarded $2 million. The dam is breaking. Detransitioner awarded millions in first malpractice verdict. This is how it all ends. And if you don't know about the detransitioners, it's actually been a movement that's been buried and covered up by the mainstream media, where these young adults who started out as these trans kids and went along with and their parents went along with the bullshit liberal narrative and had their children sexually mutilated by these quack surgeons. They are now in their adult ages, in their adult years, regretting sexually mutilating themselves, and they can't have a normal love life or normal sex life anymore. And they are trying to get corrective surgeries to fix these mutilations. And now we have one that actually filed a lawsuit and won, because that is malpractice. You're not supposed to do that to children. If it's not a life-threatening condition, you're not supposed to be mutilating children like that, especially not with their sexual reproductive organs. That is a demonic policy. And now the courts are saying this is medical malpractice, and these detransitioners are winning their lawsuits. One lawsuit has been won. That means the precedence has been set. And there will be more. But this whole trans kids thing and this sexual mutilation of the children, this is exclusively a Democratic Party. There's not one single Republican that's down with this gender affirming care bullshit, at least not one that's spoken publicly. This is an exclusively Democratic policy, and it is extremely demonic and satanic. This is why we call them the Democrats. This is not a conspiracy theory, and this is not without fact or evidence, because it went to court. It's public record. But just like typical demons and Satanists, they'll lie to your fucking face and act like that evidence doesn't exist when it does. Negan says, Citizen Man, do you have a Discord channel we can join to share information? Would be cool to have a forum for the Citizen fam. You know what? I don't have a Discord, and if you want to send me anything, my email is in the description box. It's citizenman87@gmail.com. Just send it there, and I'll look at it. Liberals are starting the We Are Don Lemon thing now. So now Don Lemon is becoming a bit of an icon with his arrest, even though it's just bullshit misdemeanor charges. And he's been speaking out publicly and walking around. When he got released, he was holding his white husband's hand. And it's funny how so many black people listen to this weirdo talk about, white supremacy and all this, then literally goes home and sucks a white man's dick. Like, I don't understand how black people can even begin to take this man seriously, especially black men. I can understand the women because, with all the emotional manipulation and all that, I can see how that logic can be overlooked. But for us men, like, we can't see past that shit. Like, how you going to tell us to hate the white man and you go home to one? How does that even make sense? How can you take anything this man says seriously? I don't give a fuck if he's right. I'm not hearing that shit. Because I don't speak fag. I'm not hearing that. I can't take you seriously. We're not the same. We don't exist in the same reality. You exist in a reality where your asshole is a vagina. I exist in a reality where you are an asshole. Two different worlds. I can't relate. Sorry. Fucking We Are Don Lemon. Yo, if I see one black man with this faggoty shit, man, you know what? I'm not gonna say nothing. I'm not even gonna say nothing. I'm not even gonna say nothing because the bully in me is gonna come out and I'm gonna lose my channel. I'm not gonna say nothing because it gets worse. So Nicki Minaj, the actual woman on the right, and this weirdo Billy Porter on the left is a liberal. Nicki Minaj supports Donald Trump. And Billy Porter explains why he can't separate the artist from the music. Slams Nicki Minaj in the process. Fuck her. And again, this is who they want black people to listen to and take seriously. A weirdo pretending to be a woman. And whether you agree with Nicki Minaj or not, you know what I'm saying? It's of no consequence. But to take the word of this weirdo, something's fucking wrong with you. To take anything this man says seriously, something's fucking wrong with you. And if I had to pick a side, I'd have to pick Nicki. Because she might be a little crazy too, but at least she knows what her gender is and she knows which bathroom to use. As opposed to this completely confused motherfucker right here. But this is who the left wants you to take your marching orders from. These freaks and these weirdos and these boule sellouts that sell their own booties for $1. Who the fuck is a Billy Porter? I've literally never seen one single production starring Billy Porter. Never have. I don't even know who this motherfucker is. The first time I heard about Billy Porter was when I was looking at some celebrity news and there was this black fag in a dress on the red carpet and everybody was making a big scene about it. Oh, Billy Porter in this gorgeous, elegant dress. Like, this is a grown man. Who is this fucking queer? Who is he? But they're always trying to put these weirdos and these homosexuals in our faces like we're stupid. And this is why they don't want men to have to embrace their masculinity. And they don't want little boys. They're teaching little boys in public school that masculinity is toxic. So when the little boys see weirdos like this guy, they'll be more likely to look up to him because he's a soft, dainty booty butt pirate. And they'll take offense to Trump because he's crass and he's mean and the way he speaks and all. He talks like a fucking man. But America has been so pussified that most of us don't know what a man is supposed to sound like because the men have been turned into bitches. So now the men talk like bitches. So in the rare occasion you come across a man that actually speaks like a man, it comes off as rough because you're not used to that. Because you a bitch. You ever heard a group of guys talking and at first it sounded like they were arguing? And then you listen a little longer and it turns out they were just having a discussion and it was all love? Because that's how men talk. And any masculine man, whether a boy or a grown man, would see a character like this and be immediately repulsed by it. Nothing that comes from that character will have any significance on that man's or that boy's thought process because we don't play Bati Boy games. We don't associate with Bati Boy them. So when Bati Boy them attack to Bati Boy them. We not no Bati Boy, so they not talking to us. That's the way we carry it. Like, I don't hate you. I don't want you to not exist. You just don't exist in my reality because you are irrelevant to me. You're no different than the squirrel in the park. I'm not going to pull out a BB gun and pop his top, but I'm not going to go chasing after it to see where he hides his nuts either. You feel what I'm saying? Yamamoto the Great says here in California, if you don't use the correct pronoun, you could go to jail. Yeah, that's absolutely nonsense. Kobe says yelling at the wrong time can get you killed. In California, Kobe, that's crazy, bro. That is crazy. Hey, yo, I just want to take a moment. I just want to take a moment to shout out my brother Kobe. Because Kobe, I have to say, man, I really admire your humility and your honesty. Because for those of you who may not know, Kobe showed up here trolling. Like he came in hot with the disrespect the first time he showed up in my chat. And I kind of cooked him a little bit, but I took it easy on him. And I offered him the olive branch of understanding. And you know what? He's been around. He's been contributing to the conversation. And he's, at least I don't know if he trolls other people, but he's I guess he's become so interested in learning and getting my perspective that he's actually taken the time to listen and contribute to the conversation. So I just want to say, Kobe, you are a shining example of, being more than just a troll. You've now become an active participant in the discussion, in a deeply intellectual discussion. And I have to say, I admire you, brother, and I see your progress, and I appreciate you being here. Just wanted to say that. But and for those of you like Jason M. Schmidt, he remembers. For those of you who remember how Kobe came in here with the hotness at first, to see him now, it's like, wow, brother, you really, you're really something, man. You know what I'm saying? So I just got to take the time out to recognize that, because a lot of times us men, we make mistakes in life and we fuck up and we pick ourselves up and, we make it a point to do better. And too many times it goes unrecognized, too many times it goes unrecognized, and that disincentivizes men to be better men. Because it's like, why would I be a better man if the world's still going to look at me and treat me the same? Shane M said, you're trying to Venmo me. What's happening? Is the Venmo not working? Because they play games like that. Like they'll block it sometimes. I've had that happen before. Okay, I got Todd's Venmo. Yes, Dr. Mindbender. What Billy Porter is doing is actually toxic masculinity. Yes, they take everything and they flip it upside down. Hey, Shane, if you're having trouble with the Venmo, let me know what it's telling you. And make sure that you got the tags right. Because if you got the wrong tag, it probably won't send it anywhere. So double check the tag that you're hitting the right citizen, man. Because there could be fake accounts out there trying to steal my donations. That probably could be happening too, where people donate to the show and there's troll accounts collecting the money. I don't know last four of your number, of my phone number. You need the last four of my phone number? Man, that's crazy. Yamamoto says, you be a better man for yourself and for your family. I say, fuck the world. Who cares what they think? It should only matter what your loved ones think. That is true, Yamamoto. But a lot of times we spend so much time away from our loved ones that, hey, Shane, if you can't do it on Venmo, see if you could do it on or let's say now your social. Damn, that's crazy. That's crazy if they want that shit. I'm starting to think Shane trying to steal. Don't steal my identity, Shane. I'm telling you, if you steal you do not want to be me. If you steal my identity, I guarantee you, you will give it right back. It's happened. I've had motherfuckers steal my identity and then email me and said, sorry, man, we can't use it. So don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. But nah, Yamamoto, what I was saying was a lot of times as men, we spend so much time away from our loved ones that, in interacting with the world, that little bit of recognition goes a long way. It's like, think about it like this, right? Let's say you're a teacher at a school, at a public school, and there's a janitor that works at the school, and he's just a janitor, so nobody pays him any attention or anything. But let's say one day you actually stop and you talk to him and you realize that 3 years ago he was the same homeless guy that you gave $10 to and wished him well and hope that he get on his feet, right? And that janitor has been alone ever since that moment. And then when you run into him, how do you think that would make him feel? And how much life and light would that bring to that man's life if you say, you know what, brother, I remember you. I'm glad you came a long way. You know what I'm saying? Shane said it went through. Appreciate it, Shane. I'm glad you came a long way, brother. It really touched my heart to see you, you know what I mean? To see you step it up and get out the streets and shit. I'm proud of you. Because as men, we need that for each other. You feel what I'm saying? So it ain't really, what the world thinks of us. It's just sometimes a little bit of recognition goes a long way. Like, let's say you had an employee that worked for you for 10 years. Even if you didn't pay him the best, if every day he came to work or every day after work, you told him he did a good job and gave him a pat on the back, that motherfucker will be there bright and early the next morning with a smile on his face. And take it from me, as an employer, I know it. I know it. Got it. I got that Venmo. Shane M. Thank you for the coffee, huh? Yeah, I'm gonna get me some coffee. I don't really drink coffee though. I don't really drink coffee. I used to drink coffee. Then I started messing around with these Red Bulls that are like 10 times stronger. And now coffee don't do it. When I drink coffee, it puts me to sleep. It's the weirdest shit. But that's what I mean, Yamamoto. You know what I'm saying? It ain't like you want to, everywhere you go in the world, everybody's like, hey, it's Yamamoto. Hey, my man. Hey. They're like, nah. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a damn music video or some shit. But the people you deal with and you interact with regularly, to know that they see you, it feels good. It feels good and it motivates you to keep doing better. Because what if, like with Kobe, right? What if I just never recognized that Kobe stepped it up and decided to actually be an intellectual instead of being a troll, right? And every time he came in the chat, no matter what he said that was productive to the conversation, we just kept treating him like he was that same old troll. Like I just kept cooking him like I did the first night, right? Do you think that'll make him want to keep coming back to watch my show, or would that drive him away? You see what I'm saying? But approaching it the way I approached it, guess what was the result? I gained a viewer. I gained a subscriber that actually appreciates my content just as much as everybody else. So we started on a bad foot and now we on the good foot. We did the James Brown, get on the good foot. That's how you do it though. That's how you handle people. Not everybody's going to appreciate you. Not everybody's going to like you. But if that's the way it is for the majority, for the couple of people that do appreciate you and do make you feel welcomed and liked and respected, that shit makes up for all that other indifference in the world. It does. Right, Yamamoto. Exactly. Because think about how many of those soldiers that come home from the war and get treated badly by motherfuckers that didn't agree with the war. Like that'll make a man feel like dirt. Kobe says, I can't find no Vaseline like Max B. Why are you looking for Vaseline, Kobe? What? Don't tell me you be jacking off to my shows, bro. Please don't tell me that. I think you were trying to tell us that without telling us that, but this is not confessionals, man. Save that shit for church. We don't do that over here. You know what's crazy, Kobe? We used to have how many people in the chat remember the Vaseline challenge? Y'all remember that shit with the greasy gang? These motherfuckers that used to keep flagging my channel all the time. Y'all remember that shit? And I used to collect donations for the Vaseline challenge so I could buy as much Vaseline for the greasy gang to send it to them. Because I always used to say, well, if they got enough Vaseline to grease themselves and each other up with, they won't have time to come flag my channel. Their fingers going to be slipping off the mouse and shit, and they're going to be more interested in rubbing each other down in grease. So the more Vaseline we can send them is the longer I can keep my channel up. I think Kobe was a member of the Greasy Gang. He's over there trying to find his Vaseline, and it's kind of coincidental that he can't find his Vaseline, and we haven't ran a Vaseline fund in about a year or so. So, Kobe, I got your shipment on the way, sir. The tuber challenge. Yeah, I think at the Vaseline challenge, I think it started at it was like $10 because I wanted to get the big jars for $7.99 and then $2 of shipping. So $10 was the Vaseline challenge. Y'all remember that shit? I think we got a greasy gang member over here. We need to get him some grease pronto. His keyboard keys, the keys on his keyboard are getting ashy. He needs some greasy fingerprints on them. So let's get this man supplied pronto. And Darwoody says I was typing slower. This man said Vaseline. Get this man his grease now. He's in crisis. He's starting to troll again. It's not good. It's not a good sign. We have to fix this. To influence the masses, aim first at the least intelligent. Disney showing the truth of how easily people are manipulated. And this was just a clip from a Disney cartoon showing the slow, retarded bird getting played, right? And this is very true because when you look at the people that are in the anti-ICE movement, you can clearly see these are not people of the best intelligence. In fact, when you look at the interviews from these mainstream outlets with the people on the street, they are literally slow. I was watching a live stream today covering the protests in LA. And one of the protesters was this grown ass man with gray hair on his face, this grown ass liberal white man with gray hair on his face, calling himself Timmy. And I'm just looking at this shit and listening to this stupid motherfucker, and he don't know what the hell he's saying. He's like, we gotta stop the fascism, and we gotta bring back the Constitution, and we gotta get these fascists out of government, and blah blah blah. And he's just saying all this, he's just repeating all this stupid liberal shit. And I'm just looking at this old ass 60-something-year-old motherfucker, and I'm looking at the name Timmy, and all I kept thinking was Timmy from South Park. Like the man was literally retarded, but he was a functioning retard. He can walk and talk, but he was stupid as all hell. And the fact that you're a grown man, like Timmy is what your parents called you when you were 4. You are fucking 50, 60 something years of this big old age calling yourself. No, your name is Tim, sir, or Timothy. It's not Timmy. You're not fucking 5, dude. But again, this is the level of maturity and the level of intelligence of these people. They're childlike. And that's why the emotional manipulation works on them, because when the Democrats push their propaganda, they make these people believe that these Democrats actually care about them. And so they go along with these bad policies that inevitably harm them. Because as long as the Democrats make you believe they care about you, if you're stupid enough, you're going to vote for them because you think they like you. Yamamoto says, Jason M said maybe he's pedo gang. Sonny Danielson, what's up, bro? Says South Park becoming reality too often. Yeah, that's crazy. Yamamoto says, what I find funny about these anti-ICE protesters is none of those idiots would let an illegal alien stay in their house. They are hypocrites. They're more than hypocrites, Yamamoto. They are NPCs. They're just repeating the talking points because that's what they're told to say. They're not thinking for themselves, and half of them don't believe that shit. They just say it because it's the trendy, acceptable thing to say. Again, look how they treat people who disagree with them. So you think these dumbed down, retarded cowards are going to stand up to the mob and say, hey, we shouldn't push this agenda? No, they're not. They're going to push the agenda whether they believe in it or not because it's the safe thing to do. It's the accepted thing to do. And the least intelligent among us are the most numerous. That's why the Illuminati illustrates the societal hierarchy as a pyramid, because the people at the bottom of the pyramid vastly outnumber the people at the top. And it's also reflective in public school classes, right? I remember being in public school, literally every grade, every class, the vast majority of the students were C and below. And there was only always, out of 30 students, there was always only 2 or 3 who were consistent A and B students. Everybody else was average and below. And if this is the dynamic within the public schools, what do you think the dynamic is when they graduate? The same shit. Very few intelligent people and masses of idiots. And if they can get the masses to go along with the agenda, there's enough intelligent people that have the intelligence and know better, but they lack the courage and the willpower. They're spineless. So they'll go along with the crowd because it's the safe thing to do. And that's why there's only a few of us in the intellectual circles who are willing to stand up against the propaganda and say, hey, this is bullshit. Because it's not easy to do. Because you will get bullied by the mobs of retards. You will. Now, the fake news has been preaching to us about how bad tariffs are, and tariffs are going to drive prices up. In fact, tariffs came up in that debate I had with my dad, and I was explaining to my dad the positive effects of tariffs compared to the negative effects, and how the positives outweighed the negatives, and how the internal tax hikes that Democrats love to do are more negative than positive. And I think I made my case pretty clear. But again, excuse me, he disagreed and told me that tariffs are driving up prices. And what's crazy is he lives in a country that does tariffs, and he didn't even know that tariffs is the price on the cost of manufacturing, not the retail cost. So the importers pay the tariffs, not the consumers. But with the tariffs, if it were to drive the prices up too high, guess what that would do? The companies that were shipping and importing these goods would then switch to manufacturing these goods domestically in the United States in order to avoid those tariffs. Thus, they can produce at cost, sell at a slight markup above cost, which maintains a reasonable retail price for the average consumer. And that's exactly what's happening with the steel industry. Breaking news. In a devastating blow to the quote unquote experts, who are always fucking wrong about everything because they're just expert liars, U.S. steel production now exceeds Japan for the first time in nearly 30 years. As a result of President Trump's tariffs, U.S. is now third globally to China and India. This is huge. We love Japan, but USA. And you know why our steel production exceeds Japan? Because those steel companies that were manufacturing the steel overseas and shipping it into the country now find it more feasible to manufacture in the country. Thus, there's a boost in manufacturing. So not only did the tariffs generate $600 billion in the last year, but it also boosted the domestic steel production. And because steel is such a base material for so many other consumer products, if the steel price goes down, every product that requires steel for manufacturing or as a material in the creation of those products will also go down. Steel and fuel are probably two of the most impactful commodities on the economy. When fuel prices go up, prices on everything else goes up. When steel prices go up, prices on everything else goes up. So when those prices go down, it has a positive effect on the economy in, if not slowing and or stopping inflation, it can also reverse inflation, which strengthens the currency, drives down consumer prices, and makes life more affordable. But the same Democrats that want you to believe that tariffs were a bad thing are the same Democrats that want you to believe 57 new taxes on working Americans is a good thing, which is completely ass backwards and antithetical to anything true, logical, or mathematically sound. So let them talk their shit, but the results will always speak louder. Now, speaking of results, in past presidential administrations in America, it was very difficult to do things like this because local governments would step in and oppress people who dared to try to generate their own energy or collect their own rainwater, and in some cases, rear their own animals and grow their own food. Like, they desperately need you to be connected to the power grid. But now we're starting to see something change in that realm where energy independence is more accepted and, in fact, even more encouraged by the Trump administration. One man hasn't paid an electric bill in 8 years. And how long has Trump been on the political scene? About 10, right? Okay. He built a power wall from 1,000 plus discarded laptop batteries that still had healthy lithium cells, paired with 24 solar panels, and powered his entire home without replacing a single cell or relying on the grid. His DIY energy system proves that trash batteries and basic solar knowledge eliminate utility companies forever. We only post the best tech, business, and entrepreneur content. And there's his battery wall right there. And he uses solar panels to power his whole house. Barnes said, I used to wear a button that said, when the going gets tough, I'm out of here. And I had a music minister come up to me and say, that's not scriptural. Was that music minister the tambourine player? Was he delivered? I'm not gay no more. I am delivered. I don't like men's no more. I like women. women. Was that him? Was that the music minister? He ran the whole show. Barnes also says, Citizen Man, a Japanese plant has opened an excavation manufacturing plant in North Carolina for first time. Such a plant has been built in the USA in 50 years or more. And you know why? You know why they opened that manufacturing plant? Because the tariffs on that the Japanese would have to pay to import those excavators would be more costly than it would cost them to come set up shop in America. So it's incentivizing domestic manufacturing. You guys remember a few months ago when I was telling y'all about how the economy is going to shift right before the gold-backed currency, and part of that was going to be a form of economic isolation, which will spur domestic manufacturing. Well, guess what the tariffs have done? The tariffs have created that economic isolation, and it is spurring domestic manufacturing, just like I said. So how's about that? We're seeing the results. Citizen Man was right again. Mike Johnson told not to count on Democrats' votes to end the shutdown. So apparently certain government agencies are still shut down, have not been funded. The Democrats and Republicans have not reached a full deal yet. And Democrats are saying they're going to push back on some things. And again, I haven't studied the funding bill, so I can't speak too much on it. But I grabbed this article because not for the headline, but dum. Why the fuck is Hakeem Jeffries, who's supposed to be a black African-American representative, wearing a small hat? Because that's who he represents, not the American people. Yo, you really want to throw people off in church? You really want to fuck up somebody's social life and make them never want to come to church again? Next time you go to church, if one of the ushers or somebody comes up to you and whispers something in your ear, you just bust out and say, "Look, man, I'm not gay no more. Get off me." Everybody's going to look at that dude like, why are you propositioning that man for sex? And don't say I'm not gay. Say I'm not gay no more. That'll make you. I mean, you kind of got to throw yourself under the bus to do it, but that makes it stick. That'll make it stick. Or if you don't have the heart to take it that far, you just say, "Man, I already told you I'm not gay, man." Just bust out and say that shit and like swat his hand away and shit, like swat him off your shoulder. That will fuck everybody in church up. Like that'll be the talk for the next month. And I guarantee you will never see that usher again. And the only reason why I say do it in church is because it hits harder in church. I mean, if you're out in a public place where gay people normally would be, like it wouldn't be such a big deal and it wouldn't be so embarrassing. But if you do that shit in church, man, you will be forever remembered. I don't know why I think of these things. I don't know. Putting on your Rodney Dangerfield suicide vest jokes to the usher. Yeah. Yeah, that's what that is. That's a suicide vest joke. Damn. That's a hell of a way to characterize it. That's what that shit is. God damn. That'll get some attention. Anyway, let's move on. Holy crap. Democrats are now filing an amendment that would ban the Trump administration from investigating mass voter fraud. Kash Patel confirms huge amounts of evidence was just seized surrounding 2020 in Fulton County, Georgia. They're panicked. They cheated. And I showed you guys those videos on the last show, so we don't have to go over it. But federal investigators have found massive alterations to Dominion voting machines that were secretly inserted after the certification process was complete. On average, about 500 illegal DLL files have been found on those confiscated machines. That means certification was invalid. And if Joe Biden's certification was invalid, you know what that means? That means the entire January 6th protest was valid because they really were in the process of stealing the election, and those American citizens that gathered outside of the Capitol building to peacefully protest it had a point, and they were right. It's now confirmed. And again, the deep state knew that these people were right because they knew they were stealing the elections. And that's why they sent in 275 FBI operatives, and they sent in Black Lives Matter and Antifa operatives to infiltrate the crowd, create violence, to demonize everybody there, because they had to make these spectacle about the protests being violent and people going to jail for protesting, rather than making it about the stolen election and people going to jail for that. Because the very people that stole the election were the same people that came back and prosecuted those peaceful protesters in order to save their own ass. Well, now there's no sacrificial lambs left to throw under the bus to save their own ass, and all of their asses are thoroughly on the line. Fannie Willis extremely quiet lately. Yeah, it's kind of hard to talk with your coworker's dick in your mouth. Just saying. Trump administration has sued more than 20 states for refusing to turn over voter files. Now, I talked about this on the last show when we touched on the Georgia raid, right? And and what I was saying was, if the election was on the up and up like they so desperately want us to believe, then there should be absolutely no pushback to the Trump administration's request for these voter files. They should be happy to hand them over, because they should say they should be of the mindset to say, well, Trump, you orange asshole, if you think we stole the election, here, see for yourself. We didn't steal the election. I mean, that would be the thing to do if everything was really on the up and up. But all these efforts to push back and fight it and call and try to cry foul and all the bullshit that they're doing, all it does is confirms for us that our suspicions were correct. They did steal the election, and the evidence is within those files. Barnes says Judicial Watch is winning lawsuits over this stuff too, Citizen Man. I believe it. I believe it. And again, if they were on the up and up like they like us to believe, everything they're doing is making us not believe that they were on the up and up. It's actually giving credibility to the Trump administration's claims, which we already know to be true. We've known that from day one. The Trump administration's campaign to undermine future elections is in full swing. Is it really to undermine future elections, or is it to prevent you assholes from undermining future elections? You see how they project? One part of that campaign is its bid to sweep up voter rolls across the nation, which began last spring and has now made its way to the courts. Right, and the voter rolls that the Trump administration has been sweeping up have been found to have fraudulent voters, and the numbers are in. We already know this. There's literally no debate about this, but they're going to sit here and lie to you. Make no mistake about what these actions represent: an attempt to take over election administration, a role that the Constitution grants to states, not the federal government. Well, the part that they're leaving out is if the states fail in properly executing their role or demonstrate being incapacitated in executing their role, then it's the federal government's role to step in and do the job that the state's failing to do. And if we have state election boards that are engaged in massive systematic election fraud, they're not adequately executing their duty. Thus, constitutionally, the feds have the right to invoke the supremacy clause and handle the federal elections in that state. So, and it's funny how these same anti-gun, anti-free speech, anti-right to privacy Democrats are now crying about the Constitution when 5-6 years ago, they were literally censoring people, calling it misinformation, for calling out the election fraud, for calling out the COVID fraud, for calling out the vaccine fraud. Our First Amendment didn't matter then. Now all of a sudden they want to scream Constitution. Kiss my ass. You can spare me with all that Constitution talk. Now, here is a map, just to put things in perspective for you guys. Here is a map of the 2020 presidential election results, right? The blue states won by Biden, the red states won by Trump. And in those blue states, when you look at a county map, the vast majority of each one of these blue states is red, and then there's just large blue cancer spots within the red. So Biden won these states by basically winning the big blue cities within these states. Because when you look at a real election county map, nationwide, there are no blue states. There are no legitimate blue states that have more blue counties than red counties. It does not exist. So how do we end up with states that have majority red counties but have blue representation? That's because the state elections are done by popular vote, and because they have packed these blue cities with excessive amounts of people who then become propagandized into being liberal voters, or in these cities, they just steal elections. The Democrats control the vote in those major cities. Thus, they control the voting results of the entire state. New York State, for example, New York City has 9 million people. The entire state has 19 million people. So whoever wins New York City, all they need to do is win a couple more districts outside of New York City, and boom, they got the whole state, even though the rest of the whole state might vote red. So there's literally no such thing as a blue state. There's only blue cities. But these cities, by popular vote, control the states. You see how that works? So this is a map. Take note of all the states. In every state that Joe Biden won, there were huge accusations of election fraud coming out of every major city in all of these states. Remember, Fulton County, Georgia, that's Atlanta. Now, voter lists provided to the federal government. So this map is going to show you which states how these states have responded to the Trump administration's request for the voter information. Green have not provided any voter list. Blue have provided complete voter list, including driver's license numbers and partial social security numbers. The red, the states highlighted in red, were sued for not providing complete voter lists, including driver's license numbers and partial SSNs. The turquoise, the teal, provided publicly available versions of voter lists or instructions on how to obtain it. Yellow received other requests from DOJ, but no requests for voter lists. And the gray, no information, right? So the green, they haven't provided any list. The blue, they gave up everything willingly. The red, they have not provided anything, and they're actually being sued, right? So I want you to look at this. These are the states that gave up their voter list. These are the states that gave up information willingly. These are the states that weren't even asked. The gray states are the ones we have no information on. But all of these states highlighted in red are the states that the Trump administration is having to sue. Now, do you notice something about this map? Well, in case you missed it, I got it right here for you. Put it in perspective for you. You notice the states that are having to be sued by the Trump administration happen to be every single state that Biden won by voter fraud and election fraud in the 2020 election. Now you see why they're all fighting back so hard, because they all cheated in the election, and those voter files prove it. And people are going to start going to jail in mass numbers once these suits are concluded, and those files have to be turned over. And remember, based on the information that the Trump administration has for the voter fraud, the election fraud, because election fraud and voter fraud, two different things. Voter fraud is fraud committed by the people casting the ballots, the voters. Election fraud is fraud committed by the people tasked with counting the ballots. Okay? So when you have polling stations where people counting the ballots are deliberately miscounting the ballots and deliberately counting fraudulent ballots, that is called election fraud. And when it's being instructed from the top down how to do it and get away with it, that is systematic election fraud. And you notice how DOJ or FBI was able to acquire search warrants for Fulton County, Georgia. That'll be right down here, right above Florida. They got the search warrants for Georgia. You think they won't be able to get search warrants for these other states? So the fact that the Trump administration is even going through the trouble of filing suit. Shout out to Rapunzel for the Cash App. She says, salute. Appreciate you. Oh, shit. We're at 5 supporters, y'all. Can we get 5 more? Can we get 5 more? And I see people are taking the $5 challenge 2 days late. So we keeping that going. So 5 more $5 challenges, whatever you want to throw in the pot, man. Let's do it. Let's get 5 more on the board. Let's get those 10 supporters tonight. How about that? So again, if DOJ had enough evidence to get a federal judge to sign a search warrant for the state of Georgia, based on what the Trump administration already knew without the voter files from the state, don't you think the Trump administration can get more search warrants for the rest of these states? So what I was saying was the fact that Trump is even going through the trouble of suing them means that he's giving them an opportunity. He's offering them a chance to play fair and play nice. And the more they push back is the worse it's going to get for them. Because you best believe people in Fulton County, there's going to be people going to jail in Fulton County. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And the other states, they better hand those records over and just go ahead and take their charges. Because again, the more they fight back and the more they push back is the worse it's going to be. And Tara Moody says Georgia is about to be the powder keg for his 3rd term. And you know what? I don't know what the constitutionality is about that, but once it's proven in court that mass widespread election fraud took place in 2020, that means everybody that gained political positions as a result of this election fraud, their elections will now be nullified and handed to their opponents. So if this election fraud case nullifies the Biden administration and the Biden presidency, that probably means that Trump may actually get a 3rd term because he was supposed to be president in 2020, from 2020 to 2025. Or I mean, from 21 to 25. And that means that the next presidential term might automatically go to Trump. I don't know. That'd be some shit if it wouldn't it? And you know what's crazy? If that does happen, I'm going to go out on a limb here and make a prediction, right? And we're almost at 3 hours, so I'm about to shut it down too. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and make a prediction before I shut it down. If Trump gets a 3rd term, I think by 2028, by the time that election cycle rolls around, there will be little to no pushback against Trump, and the level of vitriol, hate, and resistance we see coming from the media and the political establishment towards Trump, we won't see a fraction of what we're seeing right now, because by then, the pushers of the propaganda, the funders of the propaganda, the political puppets, and the terrorist organizations that are helping to push the narrative and push the agenda, they're all going to be mopped up. And they're all going to be out of jail. I mean, they're all going to be in jail. That's right, Jason M. Schmidt. They're going to be in jail. and they won't be around to even have a voice. And after seeing the end results of the tariffs, the tariff dividends, the mass expansions of tax returns, because I'm hearing people are getting more money back on their taxes this year than last year, which is awesome. The lower taxes for business owners, which is awesome. The increased production, the growth in the economy. I think by then, America is going to be sold on Trump, and it's going to be even harder for a matter of fact, the anti-Trump crowd that remains, they're going to become pariahs in society, and they're going to be viewed as the establishment stooges that they are, because everybody's going to be looking at them like, yo, Trump made shit so good for us economically. Why the fuck would we ever want to put you people back in power? And anybody advocating against Trump, they'll fall victim to, they'll get canceled. It won't be cool to be anti-Trump anymore, as it, at least not as cool as it is now. So I really believe that by then the tables are going to turn, and they're going to turn so dramatically that Trump getting a third term will be accepted. So we just got to wait and see. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for being here. And there you go. The maps speak for itself. Every state that was involved in the election fraud for Biden is the exact same states that are having to be sued because they don't want to turn over the data. Why don't they want to turn over the data? Because they cheated and they know it. Why am I lagging so much? What the fuck's going on? Maybe if I stop the screen share, maybe that'll work. Yeah. So he's disrupting the agenda. The agenda is being disrupted, and that's why they're so mad, and that's why there's so much opposition, because he's cutting off their gravy train. They're losing any possibility of ever regaining power again. Their credibility is shot, and their whole agenda is being disrupted. Double Eagle Logic says farmers been put out of business and millions got laid off last year. How is this good? That was last year. Trump just gave $12 billion out to the farmers, so they're getting put back in business. And what put the farmers out of business was the tail end results of Biden's regulations and policies. That's what was fucking the farmers up. Not only that, but so many of those farmers were not abiding by the law and hiring illegal aliens. And when the illegal aliens started getting deported and started self-deporting, they lost a lot of their labor force. So it took time for them to recover from that. So that was actually their own fucking fault, because if they followed the law and they hired people legal to work in the United States, when the ICE raid started, they wouldn't have lost their labor force. And that happened to a lot of companies. So everybody at first was mad at Trump because they were saying, well, work can't get done because all my laborers are being deported. Well, your ass should be fucking fined because you shouldn't have been hiring illegal aliens as your laborers in the first goddamn place. That's your fault. That was a poor business decision on your part. Double Edge Logic says money won't fix the farmers. The workers was their key, and brothers like you ain't trying to farm. Bro, I have a seed vault that I plant for my garden every year, and I harvest my own tomatoes and my own peppers and my own onions. I didn't get to do it last year, but every year prior to that, I've done it, and I still have my seed vault from prior years. So don't fucking tell me what I'm trying to do and what I'm not trying to do. That's number one. And number two, the farmers needed the money because they needed to hire Americans at a working wage. They were hiring the illegals because the illegals were working for cheap. So they were able to cut down on their labor costs in order to cover the regulatory costs, the extra special equipment they needed to buy, the extra special chemicals and products they needed to buy to treat their produce with, the excessive prices of fuel, of transportation because of the high-ass gas prices. You feel what I'm saying? So once they lost their labor force due to the illegals being deported, that cash infusion now affords them a budget where they can actually hire labor at a reasonable cost. Thus, Americans will be able to fill those jobs and make a decent wage. So, yes, the money does help. Double Edge Logic says, your garden. What about the people? My garden is my farm work. That is me farming. So when you said brothers like you ain't trying to farm, I debunked that because you don't fucking know me. So you don't know what I do and what I don't do outside of being on YouTube. So I was simply informing you that I do engage in farming because I have a garden of my own. And you know what about the people, Double Edge Logic? If you had any goddamn logic, if everybody else had their own fucking gardens, we wouldn't have to worry about no damn farmers, would we? So you're wrong again. It's okay to disagree, but don't tell me what I do and what I don't do because you don't know me. Now, if you were somebody that I knew personally, yeah, we could have that discussion and I'd respect your point of view, but you don't fucking know me. So don't tell me what I do and what I don't do. I'm not telling you what you do and what you don't do because I could sit here and tell everybody that you bathe in baby oil every other day, but I'm not going to do that because I don't fucking know you. You feel me? Barnes says we should all have victory gardens. Yes, I agree. Double Edge says you're not farming for the people, you're gardening for yourself, and everybody is not physically fit to have a garden. Well, there was a time when everybody was physically fit to have a garden, and America is built on self-reliance and self-sufficiency. So it's not my fucking responsibility to farm for the people. I didn't promise the people shit but some information, and that's what I'm on here giving them. And some of that information includes the benefit of farming for yourself. And if you can't do it, get down with people who can. There's such things as community gardens. So if everybody doesn't have enough space to put a garden in their own yard, there's enough public space. Hell, there is empty lots in a lot of these Midwestern cities where there's houses all in the neighborhood, and then there's one empty lot that's been on the market for like 20 months for like $5,000 to $7,000. If everybody on that block threw some cash in, purchased that land, and was collectively owned by the neighborhood, right? You don't have to be physically able to garden, but you might have the money to put towards purchasing the lot, purchasing the fertilizer, and getting the shit started. And everybody in the community takes a turn tilling the ground, planting the seeds, watering the plants, handling the harvest and all that shit. If communities work together like that, based on the idea of certain people having personal gardens, communities having community gardens, we wouldn't be so dependent on the farming industry. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. So when you get to talking about farming for the people and all that shit, what you're actually doing is you're encouraging dependence, which is what we're trying to get away from. No, I don't grow my own meat, but I do a lot of fishing. I catch my own seafood most of the time. But even still, there's ranchers that grow their own meat locally. They rear their own meat locally. So guess what I can do? I can take my produce and I can trade with that farmer for some of that meat that he's got. Or I can take some of my land and grow feed for the animals and supply my local hog man or the local cow man with feed for the cows, and he'll supply me with a half a cow every year. You know, shit like that. You got to work together. You got to make it work. But it starts with, yeah, of course I go to the grocery store because nobody grows fucking salt and pepper. You know what I'm saying? But it starts though with individual individuals taking the initiative. And if you can dig out a plot of dirt on your land and plant some seeds and grow some food, and that inspires your neighbors to do the same thing, and everybody gets on that train, whatever I can't grow in my yard, somebody else might be able to grow in their yard. And let's say one guy, he can't grow shit, but he's got a huge chicken coop. Now we all have access to eggs because he'll trade his eggs for our produce. It's not that hard to do, but it's all about self-sufficiency and reducing dependency. I don't remember the last time I bought a piece of produce out of a grocery store. But I have bought produce from local farmers. Last fall, I bought fucking 20 pounds of green tomatoes because I love fucking fried green tomatoes that much. Got them for the low, too. You see what I'm saying? That's how we rock. And that's how it's supposed to be. That's how it used to be. Even in the big cities, in my studies of the Tartarian Empire, the Tartarian civilizations and shit. Do you know in a lot of these big cities, when you examine the structural composition of these the flat roofs in these cities, like in New York and Chicago and shit, it turns out that certain portions of the roof were reinforced and built to sustain large amounts of weight that would be equivalent to a certain amount of wet soil. And the reason why was because they had rooftop gardens on every building. So in one apartment building that housed 7 or 8 different families in all the different units, that rooftop garden was tended to and contributed to by everybody in that building. And when it was time to harvest, everybody ate. If we get back to that and eliminate the dependency, that will eliminate a lot of the cost. And another thing it will eliminate is it will insulate us from these big corporations being able to poison us through the food supply. Because we're no longer depending on them for our food. You got to start somewhere. You know, not everybody's going to be able to grow everything they need for a full steak dinner every fucking night in their backyard. But I might have tomatoes. My man might have potatoes. I might have onions, garlic, peppers. You know what I'm saying? The local rancher might be the beef guy with all the cows. Says you're mentioning farmers who still need workers in order to make or keep the money they've been giving. They can't farm for the world by themselves. Understandable double-edged logic, but that's why I mentioned the $12 billion out of the $600 billion tariff revenue that Trump collected. That's why I mentioned what that money is going to the farmers to do, to create budgets for them so they can hire new labor to replace the illegals that got deported and self-deported. The queen needs her bees. Not sure what you mean by that, but whatever. Anyway, I appreciate the discussion, man, and I feel what you're saying, and I appreciate your concern for the farmers. That's very noble of you because the farmers are really important. All I'm saying is they're getting help, man. They're getting help. So let's not sit here and act like Trump's just ignoring them and not giving them nothing, because Trump's been harping about the farmers and supporting our farmers for the last 10 years. You know what I'm saying? That's always been on his agenda. And that $12 billion allotment is a step in the right direction. It might not solve all the problems immediately, but it's going to get them on the road to solving those problems. And I'm sure you can understand that. So anyway, guys, I appreciate y'all being here. I appreciate the love and the support. Shout out to everybody that donated to the show. I might be back tomorrow night or Tuesday. I don't know yet, but I'm probably going to do a live one of those nights if I get bored enough. Also, I'm going to definitely be back on Wednesday. I'm going to try to start doing the shows at 10 instead of 10:30 because I'm starting to like the 10 o'clock start time since I don't have to run behind the kids so much anymore. And I got a lot more time to myself to actually put shit together so I can give you guys more shows. I've been doing the uploads. You know, my last upload actually broke over 500 views. So that's pretty good because prior to that, I didn't even get 400 views on the last upload. This on the one before that. This one actually just hit 506, so that's pretty awesome. Hopefully the next couple uploads I'll start breaking the thousands, but we'll see. We'll see. There's no telling, because I like for my lives to hit over 1,000 too. That'd be nice. But anyway, I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate the love and the support. I apologize to anybody if I got testy or you felt disrespected. I didn't mean to disrespect you. It's just a spirited debate. It's all love. And I appreciate the engagement and the conversation, because you could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're over here arguing with me. So I gotta appreciate it. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, see you on the next one. Citizen Man, out.